works. It's enjoying. Yeah, we'll talk about traffic. That's what we need. Can't get through damn thing. Retail, whatever, this one. Wait for it. You know.
Okay.
Nice day. We're gonna hear that too.
Yeah, I'm not eating that.
Don't you think?
I didn't like it when I saw it.
I don't know that I've ever seen this room this full.
Ooh.
Just don't be here for the waste management scholarship.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna need your expertise on timekeeping. I have a feeling. If you don't mind. Did you see that Fort Hood is gonna be Fort Cavazos? I thought it was the perfect name.
Me too.
I really did. I've never read a negative word about the man. I don't know anything about it, but they asked something.
And this girl was my date over this deal.
Oh, you had a good one?
All right.
Thank you, Sam.
Oh, it's just something. It's still-
This is what it
81% increase.
is. Data to drive it.
Okay.
Enough data to drive it.
I just found out who it was.
We haven't had SRO in a long time.
You ready, Mayor?
I think so.
It's time.
Are we late? All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see a large crowd tonight. Appreciate y'all coming to the May 24th, 2022 Belton City Council meeting. At this time, we'll have the pledge of allegiance to the United States flag led by Councilmember John R. Holmes Sr. The pledge of allegiance to the Texas flag will be led by Director of Public Works, Matt Bates, and the invocation will be given by Councilmember Craig Pearson.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
the Texas pledge.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Join me in prayer. Father God, we come to you in Jesus' holy, precious name. We desire, Father, that these proceedings be done in a manner and produce a result that brings you honor and glory. That it meets the needs, it takes care of our citizens as we're pledged to do. And that, Father, it all done in a joyful manner. May it be so in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Okay, we call the meeting to order. We have lots of visitors tonight with public comments, but I have a couple before we get to that. On Friday, we had a statewide Texas Municipal League Finance Seminar here, led by our own Finance Director, Mike Rogers, and it was a very successful day. We had people from all over the state of Texas. Appreciate that very much. And Saturday, we also had a memorial service for our former city manager, Jeff Holberg, and it was well attended and well appreciated by the family. And I'd also like to congratulate our own Cynthia Hernandez for getting the Silver Eagle Award from the Boy Scouts of America for public service. We agree. We think that was a well rewarded, well-earned reward. And also appreciation to city staff for the long 4.5-hour council meeting yesterday to tour the entire city and see where we are and what all is going on in town. We appreciate all the work that went into that. At this time, citizens who desire to address the council on any matter may register to do so prior to the meeting, and I have several. And I would like to remind everyone to please, when you address the mic,
Mayor, those are going to actually be on the public hearing with item number 10.
are they not on the public hearing?
They're on-
Oh, okay. All right, item 10. So we'll hold off until item 10 and move forward. At this time, we're pleased to have Paul Dagereau back with us again to hand out some money to a couple of fine recipients for scholarships.
Mayor Carpenter and council members, Paul Dagereau and I are going to split time here today with you, but it's a pleasure to be with you today. We're here to present the Belton Waste Management Scholarship, and I'd just like to give a little bit of background on some statistics for this year, and then Paul will talk about our recipients and the partnership that we share. And then I'll give you a little bit more information about some of the people receiving the scholarships before we take a picture. But this year we received 4 total applications. It's the first time since we've been doing this that we haven't received applications from Temple that we had to automatically disqualify. So everybody that applied knew they were from Belton and were eligible to receive a scholarship. Each judge was provided a packet with the applicant material and with instructions to rank the applicants by merit 1 through 4. The score sheets were tabulated and we have selected 2 people to receive scholarships today. I'd just like to recognize the judges panels, express appreciation for Amy Casey. I was a judge, Will Christensen, council member or Mayor Pro Tem David K. Lee, and then Mayor Wayne Carpenter. Paul.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. My name is Paul Dagereau. I am the WM representative to Belton. We have really been proud of our partnership that we have with Belton, well over 30 years now. This is the 10th year of the scholarship that we've been giving out. And it's actually my 10th year to be your representative. A little heavier and a little lighter on hair, but I'm still here. And I appreciate the partnership. And you guys are actually my second favorite city besides the one that I live in. I love Belton. It's such a great place to be. And certainly this is one of my favorite things that I do each year, to come out and give the scholarship. A little bit about the scholarship. The first year we did it 10 years ago, it was $1,000 and we gave it away to one person. And then years 2 through 7, we gave away $2,000. And in the last couple of years, year 8 through 10, we're giving away $4,000 now. Counting this year together, we have awarded 15 scholarships for a total of $25,000. So just want to say for this year's, the WM Belton Scholarship Award winners are Kendall Dollar with $2,000 and Lauren Rodarte with $2,000. So congratulations to both of y'all, well earned, and I hope that y'all can use the money.
We'll call them up in just a second. I want you to know a little bit more about them from their applications. So Kendall Dollar was a member of Varsity Orchestra, top 3% superintendent scholar, member of the National Honor Society, a volleyball player, a member of First United Methodist Church. Jeremy Engelkey, a teacher and coach at Belton High School, said, "In the 22 years I've coached and taught, Kendall is one of the finest leaders that I've encountered. I truly see no limit to the academic potential of Miss Dollar." Cassie Fothergill, a family friend, said, "Kendall is a wonderful example of a hardworking student who puts the needs of others before her own. As a sibling to a sister with special needs, Kendall understands the importance of leading and participating in inclusive activities. Kendall plans to attend the University of Texas at Austin and major in business." Lauren Rodarte. Lauren's a member of the National Honor Society, the Astra Service Club, top 3% superintendent scholar, volunteer for Helping Hands Ministry, volleyball player, cheerleader, and former lifeguard at Summer Fun Water Park. Melanie Clack, a social worker friend, said, "Lauren is an exemplary student, sincere and kind, with tremendous character and leadership skills." Corey Searwright, a counselor at Belton High School, quoted a teacher in her letter who said, "It's beautiful that Lauren is focused on content over grades, although it's obvious the grades have followed." Lauren is one of the brightest Belton High School will send out into the world this year, and I heartily recommend her for any scholarship. Again, that was Corey Searwright. Lauren plans to attend Texas Tech University and major in nursing. With that, let's call these scholarship recipients up here and get a picture with the mayor and Paul Dagereau. Give the scholarships, the recipients, an opportunity to address the council briefly.
Thank you so much. I'm very grateful to have received or been picked to receive such a generous scholarship.
Thank you.
I would also like to say thank you. I'm very excited to attend UT in the fall. And ultimately, I would love to come back to Belton and be able to serve my community like it has served me.
Thank you so much. We would love to have you back and hook 'em horns. Good luck next year.
Easy now.
Okay, and Paul, we can't thank you enough. I mean, I appreciate the fact that Belton's your second favorite city. We appreciate having you and 10 years of a great partnership. And these two young people obviously deserve to be rewarded. So thank you for doing that. And thank you to Waste Management. Items 4 through 8 are on the consent agenda, considered to be routine by the council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda prior to voting. At the request of any council member, it will be considered separately. Item 4 is to consider minutes of the previous meetings, May 10th, 2022, the joint council BEDC TERS workshop meeting, and May 10th, 2022, the regular city council meeting. Item 5 is to consider appointments and reappointments to the Ethics Commission. Each council member selects one person to serve on the committee. Mr. Kirkley has picked Mike Miller. I have nominated Bert Peoples. David K. Lee has nominated Mark Fitzwater. Mr. Pearson has nominated Mike Ratliff. Mr. Holmes has nominated Nicholas Raybroker. Daniel Booker has nominated Kang Duong, and Stephanie O'Banion has nominated Kathy Fox. We really appreciate these people being willing to serve on this important committee. Item 6 is to consider a resolution authorizing the submission of a grant application to the United States Department of Justice, Office of Community Oriented Policy Policing Service, COPS, for one full-time officer to be utilized as a member of the Bell County Multi-Jurisdictional Organized Crime Unit. Item 7 is to consider an ordinance on first reading and set a public hearing and second reading for June 14th, 2022, granting a commercial solid waste collection franchise to Paramount Wastewater Solutions Limited. And item 8 is to consider a resolution suspending Encore Electric Delivery Company's application to change rates within the city of Belton. Does anyone wish to pull any of those items? If not, I would hear.
I move we approve items 4 through 8 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passes unanimously. The next items are on planning and zoning. Item number 9 is Z 2215 is to hold a public hearing and consider a zoning change from single family 1 to planned development retail PDR district on approximately 1.026 acres located at 106 Lake Road. Ms. Moore.
All right, members of the council, can you hear me now? Okay. This property is located off of Lake Road, FM 439. Here is North Main Street. This property is on the north side of the road, right adjacent to Aaron's. The zoning for this property is single family 1. The adjacent zonings are mostly retail or PD with a retail base. Even across the street, there are also retail or PD with a retail zoning based. To the north are some multifamily apartment complex. The applicant is requesting a zoning change to allow for a new development for a retail store called Pop Shelf. The reason for the PD is the applicant is requesting a variance from the adopted parking standards. The total required parking spaces is 49, and the variance would allow for them to have 29 parking spaces with an agreement for joint parking access to adjacent properties. Here is the site plan that is proposed. Here is FM 439 Lake Road. Here's access to the site. Here is the location for that. It's a little over 10,000 square feet building that is being proposed. Here's a connection to Aaron's and a future connection to the movie theater. There's also a possibility to connect to the west to that art place. Here is the architectural design for the Pop Shelf store. Most of it is mostly masonry construction. The allowed zoning would allow for the retail store. Area requirements, this law exceeds the requirements for the retail zoning district. Future land use map identified this area as a lifestyle center, which is appropriate for retail, restaurant, and dense residential uses. Notices were provided to property owners within 200 feet of the property, and there were no letters of support or opposition received. With that, staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item at their meeting on May 17th and recommended approval for this site plan subject to the following. The use of the property shall conform to the retail district. Joint access driveways as shown on the site plan are required to Grand Avenue, Aaron's, and that art place. The retail use is allowed to use 20 space of off-street parking at the Grand Avenue Theater to satisfy its requirement for the 49 parking spaces, given the 29 provided on site. An agreement for the parking space will be drafted between the city and the Grand Avenue Theater to preserve those 20 spaces for the retail business. All cross-access easements shall be left open, unobstructed, except for the temporary use when needed for loading and unloading. An amenity agreement is needed between the retailer and Grand Avenue Theater. The development of the property shall conform to all applicable type 5 design standards as identified in our ordinance. That includes site development standards, landscape design standards, tree protection, preservation and mitigation standards. A subdivision plat and construction plans are required for review. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. And I just want to point out the applicant's representative, Bob Gage, is here. Should you have any questions for him?
Thank you, Mrs. Moore. Ms. Moore. At this time, we'll open a public hearing to consider the zoning change. Anyone wish to speak for or against the zoning change? Hearing none, and we'll close the public hearing and open it up for council discussion.
I'd like to compliment staff on the way we've got the cross access worked out there, all really to a second level to be able to go back into the theater parking as well as laterally over to the art place if we just put in a little culvert. So well done. We've got to keep doing that.
Anyone else wish to comment on them?
I move we approve agenda item number 9 is presented.
I'll
Second.
second.
Okay, we have a motion in multiple seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, item 9 passes unanimously. Item 10, to hold a public hearing and consider a zoning change from planned development multiple family zoning district and planned development office 2 retail zoning district to multiple family zoning district on approximately 9.432 acres located at the southwest intersection of River Fair Boulevard and Trinity Drive. Ms. Moore.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. Here is the location of the property. Here is River Fair Boulevard, and here is Trinity Drive, and it's located on the south side of River Fair Boulevard. As stated, this property has a mixture of different zonings, planned development, multiple family. They are planning to rezone about 1.5 acres, starting from this line right here. That is zone planned development office and retail, office 2 and retail to multiple family. Just want to show you what I mean by that. A majority of the lot, the area in yellow is already zoned planned development, multiple family. So the only part that's really being changed, which is a downgrade, is the green area, which is 1.48 acres from office 2 and retail to multiple family.
And this is the original zoning from the development.
This is the current zoning that was approved with the plan development that was approved in 2005.
2005.
Yes,
So
sir.
the only request, if I understand correctly, is not multiple family, but a down zoning from retail to multiple family.
Correct, from office 2 to retail
Yeah,
to
yeah.
multiple family.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. At this time, we'll open the public hearing.
I apologize, I'm still kind of doing stuff.
You're not through? Okay. They got a head on the back.
Sorry about that.
Yep.
Just going back, so surrounding zoning, there's multiple family across the street. Multiple family that's also just east of the site. And it's kind of weird, this is zone PD neighborhood service mini storage, but there's multiple family development just east of the property and single family to just north of there. The applicant is proposing to construct a 70-unit senior apartment complex at this location. Again, this property was originally zoned in 2005 as part of a comprehensive land use that provided zoning districts for the area between River Fair Boulevard, between Main Street and Lake Road. The reason for the zoning case again is to propose to change the originally zoned office and retail zoning district to the multiple family. There are no variances requested for this proposal. Here is a site plan that was provided. They are looking at 44 2 bedrooms and 26 1-bedroom apartment complex with an amenity center, a swimming pool. There are 2 points of egress off of River Fair Boulevard into the complex. These are 1-story apartment complexes. The proposed zoning change will allow for the proposed apartments. This is a 9.4 acre area for the total apartment complex. And that satisfies the requirements for the multiple family zoning district. The future land use map shows this area for multiple family use. And that again is the brown area. So the requested zoning is consistent with the future land use map and appears reasonable. Notices were sent out to property owners within 200 feet. And this map, the pink area shows the letters that we received that's within the 200 feet of the notice. Those letters were for disapproval of the zoning change. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item at their May 17th meeting and voted to approve the recommendation. The use of the lot shall conform to the multiple family zoning district. All applicable type 5 standards will apply. A final subdivision plat meeting the requirements of the adopted subdivision code is requirement. Also, civil site plan and construction plans are required for this as well. I just want to point out the applicant representative, Kevin Gasky is here. Should you have any questions for him? That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to open the public hearing since I got ahead of myself a while ago. We have several persons here tonight who have signed up to speak to this item. And we'll go in order of those that we received. First list was Mr. Carl Hudson. If you would come up and state your name and address for the record, please, sir, and please limit your time to 3 minutes. And Mr.
My name is
Pearson
Carl
will
Hudson.
Wave at you.
Pardon me?
I said, Mr. Pearson will kind of give you a signal when you get there.
My name is Carl Hudson. I live at 3108 River Cove. I'm president of the HOA at Town Hall. And thank you for letting us speak. And I also wanted to thank Kevin Kasky from Kimberly Horn, because he gave us a lot of additional information between the zoning hearing. And that was very helpful to us. And I thank you for that, because it is really going to be some magnificent structure. We do have some very serious concerns that we want to bring to the council, though. The first one has to do with water damage. The property that is in question is above our property. And for years, that land has drifted down. The water has come down and soaked the streets really on the 3 lots, on the 3 streets above us, Sabine. It's come down and that causes damage. It comes down to the middle street where we are, and there's land between our street and Chapel Oaks apartment that has been eroded over the years. And that is also causing damage. And if not contained, it will go to the foundations of the homes. So one of the things we're asking is, as you ask for subdivision and construction plans has to comply, you have to comply with your wishes, that you please consider doing with them when they build what was done with the movie theater, some way of handling all that drainage, because we cannot handle any more drainage than what we got. That's our number one concern. The second concern is traffic flow. And traffic flow, I don't know if a traffic pattern analysis has been done, but I can tell you the traffic flow on River Fair Boulevard is very heavy. 317 down all the way to 121, 317 to the high school. We have 3 communities on Rivertown. We have River Place, Town Homes Fair, and Stony Brook. They're all jammed in there together. There's a lot more traffic going up and down the street than there was a few years ago. And that presents certain types of hazards. So I just bring that to your attention because that is traffic and dense. I don't think that was designed for that, but that's where we are now. So we're asking you to take the proper action for that, please. Thank you for letting me be up here. That's all I really had to say, and appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. We appreciate your coming. Next person who signed up was Miss Judy Hudson.
Hi, I'm Judy Hudson, 3108 River Cove. And I would just like to say just a few more words about the traffic situation that we do have there. In the morning and in the evening, as you know, River Fair Boulevard is not a long street. But from several years ago, when they fully opened River Fair Boulevard up at 317, the traffic has really, really increased, especially in the morning going to the high school and up to 121. And it goes both ways. In the evening, we have it all. Now, with the added traffic, you also have added trash, which we have had. We have seen a great lot more of that going on. And then also the possibility of vandalism. Now, which we have also had some instances of increased climbing over private fences, getting into the swimming pool at the townhomes, this type of activity, which is a concern to us. So I'm just asking that when you make your determination, that you consider the constituents that you have in the 3 properties that are already established along River Fair Boulevard, the townhomes at River Fair, we have Stony Brook, and we have River Place to be considered. And I want to thank you all for what you do, because I know it's a hard job and it's a thankless job. And I know that you always work and do what you feel is best for the town of Belton, and we thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hudson. I appreciate your saying that. It's not all thankless. Giving those scholarships tonight for those high school kids was a great honor to be able to do that. But thank you for your comment. The third person to sign up is Mr. Jack Garner.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, I want to thank you for the opportunity, for this opportunity. I appreciate it. I'm also a homeowner in River Fair. My home is at 3104 River Cove. I've been there, we've been there since 2009. And I wanted to thank also Tina and Amy for their help, and Mr. Gasky. They've also, like Mr. Hudson said, they helped us tremendously with some of the questions and kind of eased our mind. But there are a couple of major concerns. Traffic was the one we talked about. I wanted to talk a little bit more about drainage, about the problem there. We've had some water problems in the past. When the movie theater come in, they had to redo some of the drainage. They had to put a drain under the road. We've had several homeowners have to put in some French drains. We've had to add some rock to help the flow of the water. We've got that pretty much under control. But one of the major concerns now is we've got 9.5 acres above us. And it stands to reason that being above us, and it's unstructured now, it's doesn't have any structures on it, it's not asphalt. But once it becomes, the project is completed, there's going to be a lot of water that's going to have a place to go. And I really feel like that someone, and I haven't seen a drainage study. I'm not an expert on this side thing, but it stands to reason that the water is going to come downhill. And like Mr. Hudson said, we have concerns about not only our foundations, flooding to the houses, hygiene with the standing water, that sort of thing. So as long as someone is paying really close attention to that, we would appreciate that. One of the things I want to say, if we don't address this drainage problem at the very top, then there's going to be, it's going to, I think, create an adverse impact on our neighborhood and on the homes, not only in River Fair, but also it does affect the homes on Trinity Drive, which connects off of River Fair. So that's something that I just want to reemphasize that you really need to pay attention. We would appreciate you really paying attention to the drainage situation, because that's going to be that's going to mean, the values, the home, the values we were concerned with, but we're not concerned so much with that anymore, because this appears to be going to be a upper end, a complex, and Mr. Gasky eased our mind on that. But
15 seconds, sir, please.
Yes, sir. But I appreciate y'all looking into that. And once again, I want to thank you. Your job is tough. I've been in public service 50 years myself, and I thank y'all for what you do.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And bless you for serving for 50 years. Next person to sign up is Nola Gorham.
Mayor, City Council people of Belton. My name is Nola Gorham, retired. I bought a multifamily townhouse at River Fair It's very well developed, has good caring management. My address is 3101 Sabine Cove, and I'm very happy to have been there for 12 years. First of all, thank you for serving, as it's been mentioned. I might mention that we need your goals of higher development standards. To do a comprehensive study and produce the 2030 projection on the city of Belton was a massive undertaking. And the result was a big one in a very big way. In it, the future land use map is designated the same as now, the big blue circle you've seen up here. We are a lifestyle center with the same zoning for river development in 2030. Therefore, for the next 8 years, we hope you will remain affirmative to the existing plan. The people who reside here are pleased with these zones. We do not wish to change the essence or appearance of the fine place it is for home or for working. Sabine Cove people were of one accord when they were mailed the zoning change. They and their spouses questioned valuations and had other identified concerns. So they've signed protests against the proposed site, which at the time was called simply a non-specified type of senior apartment. Within the limited time frame, we talked with the rest of the people living at townhomes at River Fair. They weren't included because they were not in the required 200 feet around area. They were disturbed too and signed protests. More people learned about zone changes and are concerned, like Trinity Street's new citizens. However, in a matter of days before the deadline, the city clerk received and certified the signatures of 52 people who said no. We are proud of these citizens who are community, who came together and organized quickly and responded. Respectfully then, we submit that the necessary flume zone amendment should meet the required, should meet the 3 important evaluation criteria. Thank you for listening and your consideration.
Thank you, ma'am. Next person to sign up is Kevin Gasky.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Kevin Gasky with Kimley Horn. Be happy to answer any questions you have regarding the project.
Could you state your address for
Sure.
us, just for the record?
13455 Knoll Drive, Dallas.
You wish to make any statement about the project?
Just like to reiterate that it is a 55 and over community. And once we get into the engineering, we will have to look at the drainage. There is an inlet today up on River Fair Boulevard that takes some of the drainage to the north, some of the drainage then goes to the south. I have been by the site multiple times and have looked at the topography. The residents are correct. The site does sit a little bit higher than their property, and we'll have to address that in the engineering such that water does not flow onto their home sites.
Okay.
Is it safe to say, Mr. Gasky, that there will be less flow, a better controlled and metered flow after the engineering and construction?
I wouldn't use, it will be controlled. I don't know about metered. It'll be going to the north or to the south. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Gasky. The next person to sign up is Mark Matisse.
Good evening. My name is Mark Matisse, 3200 Rankin Street, Dallas, Texas. I'm part of the developer, owner, operator, and am available for questions if you guys have any.
Any questions? For Mr.
Just
Matisse?
open forum.
No.
We may have some for you later.
Okay.
Thank you. And the final person to sign up tonight is Sherry Shador.
Hello, Sharice Shador, 3110 River Place Drive. And I guess now that you're inviting questions, I guess my question is, and then to the council is, if this my understanding then is that it's for senior apartments. Is that right? Only? Is that right?
55 and up.
Okay. Okay. And can that be changed later on from a senior apartment to multifamily that is not restricted to age?
It's deed restricted in the rental agreements. to 55.
We will be happy to answer that after the public hearing. Unfortunately, you have 3 minutes, so just your comments at that time.
Okay. I have lived in River Place for 8 years and have just seen an increasing amount of traffic and accidents, fatalities in that intersection. And so just with the high school and pedestrians, new drivers, my concern is adding more traffic to that intersection because there isn't a lot of alternatives for that traffic flow. So I know that Belton needs senior housing and that would be something where I don't think it would significantly increase the traffic, but if it were to move to multifamily with a greater density, that would be my concern is when you're having much more traffic, much more drivers, much more density adding to this problem that I think needs to first be looked at and resolved with the Lake Road 121 intersection. So thank you.
Thank you. We have no one else signed up to speak to that issue. This time we'll close the public hearing and allow the council to discuss the item. Questions or comments?
I don't know that you could ask for a better project, especially with considering transition from retail, Lake Road area into residential multifamily. There's just normal progression. And I think we're awful lucky to have somebody that is willing to say, hey, we're going to set some age restrictions. We realize there may be issues with the drainage. We're not going to impact anybody downstream. And it could be a much denser project from what I understood.
Could be twice
and
more.
That's not the case.
Right.
And so I think with more space, the ability to control drainage and the engineers will review and approve, and we don't want to flood anybody. We don't want anybody's foundation to change. I don't want mud in your yard. I just don't. I don't want to hear about it. And so we take this very, very seriously, but we also like development. And it's hard to tell somebody across the street that you can't develop your property. And so let's do it in a very sensible, controlled manner that is a win-win for everybody. And we are looking out for everyone. And it's so, I don't want to ever tell a developer we can't do that. Let's work together and figure out a way and make it happen. So I'm excited about the project. I think it was planned correctly. I know our city staff will work diligently. We've gone back and mitigated flood issues and increased drainage ponds and detention ponds and done everything in the world to fix anything that was ever an issue. But I really don't want this to ever be a start or impact residents who are already there. So I hate also that we don't provide enough information initially. We get people so worked up and in the neighborhood and foaming at the mouth and ready to tear into us. And then they say, oh, wait, the developers are really a pretty good guy. I've looked at his project in Waco. I've looked at his project in Round Rock, and they look absolutely beautiful. So let's take a step back and maybe reevaluate that. And at my request, if we do have the ability to share some more information early on, I sure hope we can do that at every possible opportunity. Thank you.
John, I agree. I know when I get things on behalf of the church or home, I mean, it's really not clear exactly what I'm looking at. So if we can do more, provide more information up front, I think it would be really helpful to those. I want to thank Mr. Gasky and the developer for providing the additional information later on that really helped clarify it for us. You know, back in 2005, without rezoning, they could have put 144 multifamily units there without ever coming back to us. But now we're doing less than half of that in what appears to be a very high quality development with pretty significant rents of 2,800 to 3,500 a month. So this really looks like a very positive development. So we thank you for providing that information, sir, and what you're going to do for our city.
And I would also add to that, I think coming to us and moving from the retail and office to the family housing adds to that community and that neighborhood. Appreciate Mr. Hudson, all of you coming to us. We want to hear what you have to say. That's who we are. We serve you. We serve the community. We look at the issues like the density and how we can best make that work for you all. Also understanding that one of the things that we do for our community is that the tax structure that exists is beneficial to each of us when we have the highest and best use of that property. And the quality of this project is just incredible.
I would like to just add a thank you for coming and sharing about the project. And I also thank you all for sharing your concerns, because if we don't know what we don't know. And so I appreciate each individual that spoke. And I would just say that having been on P&Z and involved so long, I've seen multiple type senior living projects come and go and be denied because of density or one other. I can think of 3 or 4 in my mind right now, and none of them compared to this. This is going to be beautiful. And on a property that's already currently zoned where they could do this, just that one piece, I'm excited for all of us that this kind of development's coming to that area. And I think your concerns of traffic and drainage are certainly very valid. And I know that that's something we'll all work together on to ensure that the best possible outcome takes place. So I'm supportive. Can I make a motion to move to approve?
No.
Why not?
Yes. Appreciate all the comments of everyone tonight and in the information that's been submitted to us. Certainly, as you can see in the conditions of the proposal, there will be a subdivision plat review and all the drainage issues will be addressed as a part of that, just in our standard review process. One of the items that's been discussed in this whole process is the development, the number of units that are proposed here. We've had some discussion today with the property owner, and I believe with the applicant as well, about a slight recommendation change to the ordinance. And the original request was for straight multifamily zoning. We have drafted an alternate ordinance for the council to consider to retain the planned development district and have a commitment for the site plan that the applicant has submitted. And that would certainly give some assurance about what is proposed, what's been presented and proposed. And we'd like to present that to the council and certainly to the applicant and make sure that everyone would be comfortable with that.
The prospective developer has not purchased the property yet. They'll purchase it at, once the engineering plans are done and they get all their city approvals, they'll make the approval. So we're kind of in a situation now that if the property is zoned with that condition, then the seller, and if the buyer does not close, then the seller's basically taken 144 units and downgraded it to 70 units. The current plan, the 7.8 acres, like Councilman Pearson pointed out, could develop 144 units today. The owner does not want to lose that right until such time that Carbon, who's looking to develop the property, purchases the property. So by putting that 70 unit condition on it now, the seller would not agree to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I make a motion or do we have more comments?
I'm just. Work on this. Yeah. Mr. Listy, any other comment about situation?
certainly council discretion on where to go. I think we were just trying to reflect in the ordinance what was proposed by the applicant. If council is prepared to rezone the property all to multifamily, then that would be apparently the applicant's continued request at this time.
Do you want to make a motion?
If you don't, I will.
I
feel
do.
comfortable.
Yeah, I do too. I'd like to make a motion to approve item Z 2216 as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. This has to have a final plat, and we've heard loud and clear that their drainage is an issue. And I want to assure you that city staff is going to work very carefully to try to make sure that that is addressed with the developers. And Mr. Gaskin is aware of that concern as well. Everyone's heard the same thing. So
Please come back for the plat review.
yes,
Please.
And thank you, Mr. Gasky, for reaching out to the residents. That is
Yes.
such a powerful, well, I'm sure they did, but thank you for the conversation.
I think that helped a great deal, and we do appreciate people coming. And most of the time, we do agree. Unfortunately, we don't always agree, but we do appreciate your concern. And that drainage issue will certainly be looked at very carefully as this is developed. And I do think it's going to be a great, some of us are senior citizens. I think it's going to be a great development for Belton and something that we'll be proud to drive by. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Item 11 is to hold a public hearing and consider a zoning change from agricultural to planned development, multiple family district PDMF on approximately 18.16 acres at 5890 Toll Bridge Road. Ms. Moore?
I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. The property is located south of I'm sorry. Took the pointer off. It's located south of I-14. It is west of Loop 121. Here is Old Golf Course Road. It is located just east of that and south of West Avenue O. As you can see, this site is already developed. It's developed as a mobile home community. This property is zoned mobile home. To the north of the property is the Belton Business Park. Part of that is zone PD Commercial 1, and the other part is zone light industrial. South of this lot is zone Commercial 1. There's also a single family 3 zoning. Just east of the lot is zone Commercial 2, and there are some other Commercial 1 and retail zoning nearby. The applicant is a prospective buyer for this property and is exercising his due diligence on the subject zoning. Sorry about that. Ultimately, the applicant would like to construct an apartment with a density of 28 units per acre. However, due to sewer capacity issues over there, that might not be able to happen. With that, he's requesting an alternative consideration for a commercial 2 zoning district. So in case if he's not able to develop the apartments because of the sewer capacity, he will revert to the commercial 2 zoning. All right. The area will meet the requirement for both the multiple family and the commercial 2 zoning district. Again, the variance is requested because he is looking at a density of 28 units per acre instead of the 18 that we currently have. With that roughly equates to 200 units on this lot. Okay, for sewer capacity, the developer is also the property owner for the single family 3 and commercial 2 and other commercial lots. With that development, this staff expressed some concern with sewer capacity for 196 houses that they're proposing over there. So the applicant turned around and is looking at purchasing this mobile home site, which is currently served by septic tank, and he's requesting for a higher density. So we're unsure whether or not our sewer is able to handle that without some study. So with that, the applicant has agreed to conduct a flow monitoring test for about 3 months. He will provide the data collected to city staff to review to determine whether or not our system is able to do the handling to service that development. For a future land use map, this is a commercial corridor, which allows for both the commercial 2 and the multiple family zoning district. Notices were sent out to property owners within 200 feet of this property. We received 1 letter of opposition with concerns of removing affordable housing from the area. She also had concerns of lack of water and sewer. Again, developer is developing the properties just south of here, and he will extend water and sewer to service this area if the sewer capacity is able to handle that. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item at their May 17th meeting and recommended approval of the site with these conditions. Multiple family, should the city determine that the sewer wastewater capacity is acceptable for multiple family in excess of 18 dwelling units per an acre, the applicant is required to submit an application for a detailed site plan review for the development for compliance with applicable zoning and design standards. So the lot would be able to function for multiple family development, must conform to all applicable standards. Maximum density of 28 units per acre is allowed. If 18 units or less is proposed, a site plan review will be handled through an administrative process and will not come back to city council. For commercial two, if an unfavorable determination is received for the wastewater capacity study, the applicant is any use that meets the commercial two zoning district is acceptable. That again will go through the normal process of a site plan review and not come back. In either case, it must conform to our design standards. A final subdivision plat is required and a civil site plan and construction plan review is also required. I will be happy to answer any questions you have. I don't see the applicant in attendance.
Any questions for Tina? This time we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wish to speak for or against the item? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and open it up for council discussion.
Looks like a good project.
Yeah.
An improvement. That said, I would move that we approve item 11 as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve item 11. All those in favor, please say aye.
Sorry, item 12.
I'm sorry, item 12.
Yes.
Please say aye. And we have a unanimous vote. And no one was opposed. I take it because I think I heard 5 voices.
Mayor, could we just for the record address item number 11? Which was advertised for this meeting, but was not acted upon by the Planning and Zoning Commission. It was actually tabled by Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay.
And so there was no action at this meeting, not a public hearing. It was advertised for this meeting, but there's nothing coming forward. And that item will advance to the council once P and Z has made a recommendation on it.
We need to type.
Postponement the proper term for this? Do we need to specify until?
I apologize. I think we're on the wrong thing. Because it was so crowded and people were moving, I don't think you heard what was said for item 11. This was the presentation for item number 12 for a different zoning district.
Yeah,
Correct.
I thought
Okay.
that's what we were.
Just clarification.
So what,
Postpone.
I move we
Okay.
postpone item 11.
Second.
All those in favor to postpone that item, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Do we need a date until? No?
we hope that it will come back at the June meeting of P and Z and
Okay.
council, but we don't know if it'll clear P and Z. So we're not ready to schedule it for council at this particular point in time.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Resolve my motion to that. Until issues are resolved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I think everyone was in favor. So that item is postponed.
Thank you.
And did we satisfy item 12 as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Your motion was actually for 12 and action was taken and unanimous.
Yeah. Item 13, consider a final plat for Blair Townhomes compromising 0.679 acres located at the northeast corner of East Second Avenue and North Blair Street. Ms. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, this property is located at East Second Street, Blair Street. It is located on the northeast corner of that. You might remember this from a recent zoning case. It was zoned to planned development, multiple family. Here is what's being proposed, approximately 0.679 acres. It's 1 block, 10 lots and 3 tracts to be owned and maintained by the HOA. And those lots will provide drainage, parking, and also setback requirements. Water and sewer will connect to the city system. There are connection points on Blair Street. Right away, both North Blair Street and East Second are local road and they exceed our requirements, and the applicant is not required to do any perimeter street improvements or sidewalks. Drainage was reviewed by staff and found acceptable. For parkland dedication, the applicant has opted to pay a fee in lieu of, and that will be $2,000 for the 10 units that's proposed. Funds will be used at parks within the mile. That could be Yeti Poke or Bill Street Park. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item at their meeting on the 17th and recommended approval of the final plat. Be happy to answer any questions that you have. Lena Chate, the applicant, is here. Should you have any questions for her?
Any comments or questions regarding the Blair Townhomes?
I'm glad to see that moving so quickly. That's pretty impressive, to be honest. So I'd like to go ahead and approve the final plat for Blair Townhomes, comprising of 0.679 acres located at the northwest corner of Second Avenue and North Blair Street.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 14, to consider a preliminary plat for Hidden Trails comprising 55.8 acres located east of I-35, north of Loop 121 and south of Avenue R.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, the applicant Lena Chate is here. Should you have any question at the end of presentation? This property is zoned single family 3. You might remember it from a zoning case last year. What they're proposing is approximately 55.8 acres, 6 block, 256 lots, 3 drainage tracts to be owned and maintained by the city. So for reference, this is East Avenue R. Here is Miller Street, and here is that subdivision. Water and wastewater will connect to the city system. It meets the appropriate grades for, size for fire protection. For access, there are 3 proposed. One is on East Avenue W, East Avenue S, and Alita Street. All roads that are proposed in the subdivision are local roads, 50 feet of right-of-way, 31 feet of pavement. With curb and gutter, there are no perimeter street improvements required. However, the applicant is required to provide the connections to the access road. There is a little bit of pavement missing on Avenue WS and Alita that will be required for the applicant to get access to that neighborhood. Drainage has been reviewed by staff. For parkland fees, the applicant is proposing to construct a 5-foot sidewalk on East Avenue S from the development to the Tiger Splash Pad that's located just east of there on Wall Street. That improvement estimated cost is around $68,000, which exceeds the requirements for the parkland dedication fee. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item at their meeting on the 17th. They recommended approval of the subdivision plat and also approval of the alternative parkland compensation to allow for the construction of the 5-foot sidewalk connecting to Tiger Splash Pad along Avenue S in lieu of the parkland fees. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Approximately 256 residences, is that correct?
Correct.
Questions or comments from council?
Yeah, and my memory may have faded a little bit, but there was, I believe, a drainage issue, maybe Freedom Loop to Royal Loop, or have we fixed that and are confident that 250 homes will not cause further issues downhill?
There have been some upgrades to that, and that has been studied by our engineering team. And yes, sir, that will be.
And the real reason I ask is because when I heard the drainage has been approved by staff, did we have somebody else look at that? And
Right. Of course, you're remembering this is the Golden property, and you're remembering the drainage interim fix that was established and installed a few years ago. And recognizing that when this property is developed, all the drainage will be handled. So I know Lena, see Lena here somewhere. Yeah, there she is. Is going to be handling this as it comes through. This is a preliminary. And
Sure.
so all the final drainage will be addressed as part of that final plan. Lena, you may want to address it. It's been an issue in the past, so they may want a little understanding of that.
Lena Chate, Belton Engineering, 106 Northeast Street, Belton, Texas. So what we did, we took that, there was a temporary drainage easement through this property that runs west to east. And we're dedicating a 50-foot drainage easement with this one, and we're going to be cleaning that channel, and we're going to define it. It's going to be 4-to-1 side slopes. It's and about 3.5 to 4 feet deep, and it should improve the drainage issues and the funding that we had before.
I just want to make sure everybody remembered.
That's good. Any other questions for Lena? Thank you.
I don't know slope and all that, but take care of it.
Do I hear a motion?
Yes, sir. Just let me get back to. When you're ready. What number are we even on?
14.
14. I move we approve item P2125 as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Look forward to your development. Thank you. Item 15, to consider a final plat for Emma's Grove, compromising 4.097 acres located on Toll Bridge Road and north of Elmer King Road. Tina, busy day.
Yes, sir. As you can see, this is another zoning case that you guys heard recently that changed the zoning from agricultural to single family one. This property is located on Toll Bridge Road, just on the north side of the road, close to the intersection of Elmer King Road. Again, this is 4.097 acres. It's 1 block, 3 lots. Normally, this would qualify for administrative review. However, the applicant is asking for a variance for fire protection standards, hence why it's coming to the commission. With that, staff had originally started looking at it as administrative. So with that, perimeter street improvement, sidewalk, and parkland fees have been administratively waived. Water, this is within the city of Belton CCNs. However, there are no water lines in this area to provide service. And there are no plans to extend in this area in the near future. Water lines about a half a mile north of here across the land passes close to the River Farm property, which is north of this property. For fire protection, the applicant again is requesting a variance because there are no hydrants or water line here. The property will be provided domestic water from well water, which has been approved by Clearwater. The fire marshal was not in support of the variance. Other commercial developments in the city have provided some tanks. You might remember development for Exxon's gas station on 1670. They have a tank there. And there's some other commercial developments that are also doing that. But because this is a residential property, planning staff and the planning commission were in support of the variance request. For sewer, again, this is in the city of Belton's wastewater CCN. However, there is no service available at this location. The applicant will be providing an on-site septic system, which requires Bell County approval. There's access provided off of Toll Bridge Road, and there's also a private easement that runs behind the property that runs north and south that provides access. For right-of-way, this plat was submitted prior to our thoroughfare plan amendment. However, the applicant is proposing a dedication to achieve the 80 feet of right-of-way that's required on Toll Bridge. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this at their meeting on the 17th and recommended approval of the plat and also approval of the variance request for fire protection. I do want to add that because this is in the city limits, not in the ETJ, that's why staff could not approve this administratively. We are looking at ways to update our codes, so might be coming back to you to come up with a reasonable solution for other properties in the same situation. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions for Ms. Moore?
Chief, are there any options? Any good options? You thought I'd never ask, huh?
I think what we have to look at here is the ordinances that you guys set in place. And that ordinance says that the fire chief or designee can waive some of these requirements if it causes too much of a hardship. And if you're looking at some of the areas that's been annexed and lack of water protection there, it really does cause that landowner hardship by saying you can't build anything on your own land. So in this case, that ordinance is in place, we really do look at the hardship that it would cause and kind of waive that requirement, if you would, taking a closer look at the situation on a residence. What we're not willing to do is waive that requirement for fire protection for commercial. As Tina said, we're looking at different options where this could happen in other parts of the city limits, and coming up with some alternatives, which I think will be fair. And some of those alternatives would be limiting structure distances in areas that aren't serviced by water to minimize the effect, to not just that, to try to isolate it to that building itself. But yes, there really is not a good alternative here. It does cause a hardship, which we are willing to not overlook, but understand.
Yeah, good way to put it, Chief. Thank you.
Question.
Questions for me?
I have a question.
Sure.
Chief. In doing so, particularly if it were one person who owned the land and was building his own structure, and he said, I'm very much aware of the issue. And so the variance, I'm accepting it as the landowner and the homeowner. When there's 3 lots there and people buy them, that is very clear to the new purchaser, the issue. Is that correct?
We want to make that very clear. And that's kind of the concept that ourselves in planning are working close together on developing some of those zones that would be clear when they plat those zones or plat within those zones, that they understand that there isn't adequate fire protection and that they are limited to the distances between structures. We're trying to do that. Unfortunately, the code doesn't do that for us. We have to go in there and kind of make those type of modifications specifically.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief Fontenot.
I move we consider the final plat for Emma's Grove comprising of 4.097 acres located on Toll Bridge Road and North Elmer King Road.
Understand your motion to approve the plat.
Yes.
And to include the variance.
Yes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the plat, including the variant. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Item 16, consider a preliminary plat for River Farm Phase 1 comprising 131.588 acres located on Toll Bridge Road, north of the Lampasas River.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to point out the applicants are here from Kimberly Horn and Associate Brett. So this is the total area for River Farm. This is just WIC Phase 1. The total area will consist of 6 different phases. Phase 1 is this lighter pinkish color that we're considering at the moment. With that is only a portion of the property that we're looking at. What the applicant is proposing is approximately 131.58 acres, 16 blocks, 297 lots, 24 open space area, and that's for drainage and utility easements, and 1 amenity center. There are 3 pages in the site plan. So, goodness gracious, that consists of that. Okay, per our development agreement, there are different types of housing types that we approved as part of that. There's maximum allowed for those. With that, type A is a single family 3 type with 5,000 square foot lot sizes. Type B is a little bit bigger, close to a single family 2 with 6,000 square foot lot size. And they're also allowed to have patio homes that's limited to 15% of the area. And townhomes also that same 15%. With this development, they're proposing 83 of the type A, 169 of the type B, and 44 of the patio home type development. And staff has reviewed it and meets all of the standards that are provided in that chart. Water, as you know, this property is connected to the city of Belton CCN. and water will be provided throughout the site. The city will be responsible for maintaining the water lines after they are constructed. Sewer will also be provided and connected to the city CCN. The city will also be responsible for maintaining that sewer line after construction. Here is an overall look. The water line will connect to Toll Bridge. Here is where the lift station that is currently being constructed. They will do some offsite improvements to connect to that lift station. For access, there are 3 that are proposed for the ultimate development of the River Farm community. The first one is Canopy Boulevard. This is a proposed collector road that the applicant is proposing. It is has a median that split the roads into 2 points of access for the community. There is also Red Thistle that is on the north part that is part of the city thoroughfare plan, and it's a minor collector road that for this first phase will be constructed all the way down to Blue Heron Boulevard to provide the third access that's needed for the 297 lots that's proposed in phase 1. For the third one is an unnamed street that will be provided in phase 6 for future connection to Toll Bridge. For streets, most of this is provided through the development agreement that was agreed upon. Toll Bridge is a major collector road that requires 80 feet of right of way and 36 feet of pavement with curb and gutter. For the applicant, there are 2 phases. Phase 1 is adjacent to their property, consists of 2 lanes and a continuous left turn lane, and also a 10-foot concrete trail. Phase 2 will be from their northern property line all the way up to Shanklin Road, and that will consist of just a 2-lane road. The city has an option to participate if they want to see the continuation of that left turn lane and also that 10-foot trail. The city can participate at that time. Toll Bridge Road will be dedicated and maintained by the city. Oops, skip one. For the development, Canopy Boulevard will be a major collector roadway. The right-of-way ranges from 100 to 87 feet. Both sides of the median will be constructed with 27 feet of pavement, curb and gutter. It will extend to the east. Right now, on the additional phases, the right-of-way will reduce down to 50. Staff is requesting that they increase that to 60 collector road to serve the remainder of the River Farm property. So that will function as an internal collector road. Red Thistle is assigned as a minor collector, which will require 60 feet of right of way, 37 feet of pavement, curb and gutter. A 5-foot sidewalk will be required on one side of the roadway. At ultimate build out, this will be constructed all the way to the eastern property line to allow for a future connection extending across the Lampasas River. Other streets that are proposed are a local roadway with 50 feet of right of way, 31 feet of pavement with curb and gutter. Local roads will be dedicated to the public, will be built to city standards and anticipated to be maintained by Bell County because they are in the ETJ. Concerns have been expressed by Bell County regarding the maintenance, and that is something that needs to be resolved prior to the final plat approval with the applicant. Drainage plans have been reviewed by staff. A final drainage will be reviewed with the final plat. Since this is in the Belton ETJ, city is not responsible for maintaining the drainage. Parkland fee, ultimately, they're proposing 3 private parks, approximately 11 acres. With this development, they are proposing 2 for phase 1. One is the amenity center and the other one is a green space. Both of them are approximately 9.2 acres. They will be owned and maintained by the HOA. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item at their meeting on the 17th and recommended approval of the plat with the following condition: the development agreement condition pertaining to the applicant's obligation to improve Toll Bridge Road and the annexation of the incorporated city portion of the property must be done. If de-annexation is not achieved prior to the submission of the final plat, a zoning change is required from the agricultural zoning that it currently is for the incorporated properties. Staff comment letter that was dated 5/9 also has to be addressed. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Moore?
Exciting times in Belton, and started work on that project 2 years ago, if not longer. And seems like it's actually gone by pretty fast.
We're getting older, John.
To be able to do a mud, yeah,
Careful there.
to be able to do a mud and all the requirements and upgrades that we required, and we really appreciate it. We're excited about it. And so neat to see us in the planning stage.
This was part of our tour yesterday, so it is exciting to have seen it and put it in perspective. So very exciting project. With that,
Council got on the ground yesterday and saw the lift station and drove through the development. So they had a real good taste of it.
Lift
So
station is
really
very
appreciate y'all
exciting.
being here today.
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we approve agenda item number 16 as presented.
All right, we have a
Second.
motion.
And Stephanie says.
Stephanie?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve item 16. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. It's an exciting project. It's going to be, that is absolutely a beautiful piece of property. Thank you for working with us to develop that. As John said, it's kind of been 2 years, it's kind of flown by, but progress has definitely been made. Item number 17, P 2213, to consider a preliminary plat for Foxwood Ranch comprising 71.58 acres located at the southeast intersection of Elm Grove Spur and Capitol Way. Ms. Moore, I think this is your last for the night.
Y'all gonna be so happy to get rid of me.
No, we
You did a
appreciate,
great job.
we appreciate all the work that you've
Don't mess it
done.
up now.
Thanks. Okay. You may recall this again from another zoning case back in March. The top half of this property that's on Elm Grove Spur was zoned from agricultural to single family 1. The rest of the lots are
Mr. Mayor, I've got
zoned
to
agri.
recuse myself on this item.
Yes, sir.
The rest of the area is zone agricultural. The applicant is proposing 71.98 acres, 1 block, 22 lots. As you can see, the lots that are closer to Elm Grove Spur right here, and here's Capitol Way, are lower density, and that's the single family 1 zoned area. The rest of the area is zone agricultural, and they were looked at by staff, and the minimum requirements are being met by the applicant. Water, this area falls within the Armstrong Water CCN district. Therefore, they must comply with their requirements, and an approval letter from Armstrong is required for the final subdivision plat. For fire protection, the applicant will be responsible for addressing fire protection due to lack of adequate water pressure on the Armstrong line. To address that, the applicant, the developer, is requiring future property owners to install a residential sprinkler system. The requirement is noted on the plat and will be included in the deed restrictions for the property. Sewer, this area is located in the city of Belton CCN. However, this will be served by on-site sanitary system, and which requires Bell County approval. For access, the lots off of Elm Grove Spurs, lot 1 through 7 will have access from Elm Grove Spur. The remainder will have access from Capitol Way. For right-of-way, Capitol Way is identified as a major collector on the city thoroughfare plan. Major collector has a minimum requirement for 80 feet of right-of-way, 37 feet of pavement. There's currently 60. The applicant is responsible for providing some dedication. I apologize, it's half of the 20, so 10 feet of dedication is required. The plat currently shows a 10-foot dedication for a portion of Capitol Way. So there is a staff comment to show the entire length of right-of-way and to provide additional dedication if needed. For perimeter street improvements, there are improvements required for Capitol Way construction, which includes an 18.5 feet of pavement, curb and gutter, and a 5-foot sidewalk. Off of that frontage road, the developer has decided to escrow the amounts for the improvement. He has also submitted a variance request to request a waiver for sidewalk requirements along Capitol Way. Staff is not in support of that variance request, as this is a proposed residential development. Elm Grove Spur is a local road with 50 feet of right of way. There's currently 40. So the applicant will be dedicating 5 foot with the northern boundary of the lots. Internal streets are 50 feet of right of way. They're a local street, 31 feet of pavement. As this is a rural development, open bar ditches are permitted instead of curb and gutter. The length of Ginger Fox Drive exceeds the minimum block length that is required in our subdivision code, which is 1,200 linear feet. Ginger Fox is approximately 1,400. So the applicant is requesting a variance from that requirement. Staff is in support of this because this is a larger lot development with the ag zoning district. Drainage, drainage has been reviewed by staff. There is some questions about this as there are some contributing off-site drainage that will have some impacts on the downstream property owners. We also forward the plans over to Bell County Engineers Office to look at this as Elm Grove Spur is actually a county road. The applicant has indicated that future residential property owners will provide detention and other mitigations for the individual lots per their deeded restrictions. City's not used to that. We're not used to passing that requirement on to future property owners. So we're working with the applicant to come up with some other way to address that. For parkland dedication, the applicant has opted to pay a fee in lieu of. So for this, the requirement will be $4,400. And that's for the 22 lots, and funds will be used at the Miller Street Park, which is within a mile from this development. Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item at their meeting on the 17th, recommended approval of the plat, denied the request for the variance for the sidewalk requirements on Capitol Way, and approved the variance for the maximum block length of 1,400 linear feet for Ginger Fox Drive. And conditions are based on staff letters of condition dated May 13th, 2022. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have, and I don't see the applicant.
Thank you, Tina. Questions or comments?
Capitol Way has a little veer to it. Would the sidewalk continue up to Decker Road, or would that?
There is existing sidewalk in the industrial area that goes up to, I apologize, I want to say Loop 121. From where that is, the applicant will only be responsible for the portion adjacent to their property. And that will be from Capitol Way to the end of this development area.
Is the end of the development Decker Road?
Well, I'm not quite sure where Decker Road is. I don't believe it's on this side.
Yes.
Farther north.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do think the sidewalk's important. I don't like sometimes that we end up with sidewalks to nowhere.
Yeah.
But
Well, this is a little unusual that this property is developing as residential,
No, I
it's really kind
understand.
of, we saw it yesterday. It's kind of.
I think
an
that's even more
industrial area.
important though, to get people off the street.
Yes. I agree with you
Any way
100%.
we can. So I would be in favor of that without the variance for sidewalks. And I don't mind, if I can get back, I don't mind making a motion. Is this, are we 17?
17.
I move, we approve preliminary plat for Foxwood Ranch comprising of 71.9 acres, generally located east of I-35 and southeast of the intersection of Capitol Way and Elm Grove Spur, and not approving the variance to sidewalks.
Okay, what about the other variants?
For the block length.
Block length exceeding 1,000 feet. Since these are really large lots,
Yeah,
we
I'm okay with
recommend
that.
approval of that.
That's fine, yes, approve that variance. Sorry.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve 17 with the variances that Mr. Holmes has pointed out. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Tina, and thank you for all your work. I think, I'm not sure I've counted them up correctly, but that's at least 600 and
I've got
some odd.
just under 650. And remember, time is money. And when this was a few weeks ago, my hat is really off to you guys. We have become extremely efficient I hear out in the community that were helpful, solution oriented, honestly, and it just means the world. And these seem to go a lot smoother. And 650 lots in some form or fashion is just impressive for little bitty sleepy Belton.
We appreciate it. Tina and Bob doing a fantastic job and their staff to
Thank you.
keep
Good job,
things
Tina.
moving along.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
I'd like to also add that I certainly appreciate those comments, but the team goes beyond the planning department. It also includes Sam and Matt and his crew. So we have a large group as well as the planning commission and of course county as well. So thank you very much for those kind words.
Thank y'all. I don't think we've ever done a night with quite that many new developments within our, not all within the city limits proper, but very close to that. So we do appreciate y'all's hard work very much. And Ms. Moore, you're off for the evening. Item 18, to consider a resolution endorsing a 5-year water and wastewater rate structure that's designed to provide financial stability for the water and sewer fund. Mr. Mike Rogers.
Let's see if we can get us going here. Second stringer in the car, in the seat.
God, Chief is on there.
Just hit play.
We are scraping the bottom of the barrel in the
Hey, look at that.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. We empty the room when we start talking finances, so that's funny how that works. In 2021, the city of Belton hired Melissa Hedden Consulting LLC to do a rate design study for our water utility and wastewater utility for 2023 to 2027. So we're looking forward for the next 5 years. I'm happy to introduce to you tonight Melissa Hedden, who's going to give you the results of that study. Come. So just poke that right there. Perfect. Move forward. I'll stand back.
Thank you for coming to Belton. We appreciate you being here.
My honor and pleasure, Honorable Mayor, distinguished council members. Thank you for your time. Before I launch off into the results and methodology and all of this fun stuff, I do want to extend a compliment to your staff. When we do a study like this, it's an absurd amount of data that they have to gather and look for and send. And then God bless Mike and Sam and Matt, because then I have to walk them through hundreds of pages of spreadsheets until their eyes roll in the back of their heads and I've exhausted them. So I just want to thank them. Your staff is very dedicated and very diligent in making sure that the best interests of the community are met. That being said, this evening, we'll talk a little bit about some methodology and really spend some time in the findings and recommendations. But before I get into all of that, I want to direct your attention to the quote at the bottom of the screen. When the well is dry, we learn the worth of water, Benjamin Franklin. I use this quote all the time because it's so indicative of what we see in the water utility industry today. We see that well, quote unquote, is running dry, both literally and figuratively. Literally in Central Texas, we have lots of fun with droughts and issues with water availability on a cyclical basis. But we also are seeing, as we're growing and our communities are growing, we're having to go out and get more water rights and more water. We also find that figuratively, it's quite frankly costing us more to produce a gallon of water today than it used to cost. And it gets more and more and more expensive. Not only do we have to deal with inflation, just like you and I have to deal with inflation, we go to the grocery store, but we also find that construction inflation, especially for the technology that we have to put into water and sewer treatment plants to meet the ever-changing requirements, it gets more and more expensive, and the inflation of those costs are higher than just general CPI. Beyond that, we also find and have to realize that when your original water utility infrastructure was put in 20, 30, 40, 50 plus years ago, it was likely paid for with grant money from the federal government. It could have been paid for with developer money, or it was paid for so long ago, nobody knows who paid for it. But at the end of the day, a lot of your utility rates and don't even recover the cost of what it would cost to install that infrastructure. And what we're finding is that as we have to replace and rehabilitate that infrastructure as it's aging, we are going to have to, the utility rates aren't structured to pay for that. So your utility rates have to take on more than customers are used to. This is called the infrastructure crisis, which the American Water Works Association calls of where we're at. And it applies to virtually every utility, water and wastewater utility across the United States. Mr. Franklin's words about learning the worth of water becomes extremely significant. I would make the case that we, in general, all of us, have come to undervalue water. We see symptoms of our inherent undervaluation of water in our day-to-day living. I venture to guess, and I'm not going to make anybody raise their hands, but if I did, I would venture to guess virtually everyone in this room is guilty of turning on a shower, letting water go right down that drain while we wait for the shower to heat up in the morning. We don't like cold water. We do that when we're brushing our teeth, loading our dishwashers, watering our lawn. These are all symptoms of our inherent undervaluation of water. I would also speculate that if I asked people to raise their hands, not a single person would raise their hands and say, yeah, I go to the gas station and I run a couple gallons of gasoline on the ground before I put it in my tank so it's the right temperature. We don't do that. We instead take the hose and shake it and get every single solitary drop in that tank. So we see this inherent undervaluation of water. And unfortunately, as I mentioned, this is encountered by utilities across the nation. We're having to learn that worth of water. And for utility managers like yourselves, you're going to have to work to understand that value so your residents and citizens also understand that. Part of that value of water comes into what I call the economic reality of water. At the top rung, we see that water generates revenue. And if we structure our utility rates right, to recover the cost of operating the utility. We also find, though, water is critical to industry and as a result, the economy. We've got lots of industry. It doesn't matter if you are a soup factory and you need the water to make your soup, or if you are a gas station on that corner, you've got to have some water. And it's a fundamental building block for communities. If you noticed this evening when your planning and zoning staff presented, every single one of those subdivisions talked about water. The final point, though, with water and the reality of water is it is literally the only commodity we can't survive without. We physically cannot live without water. This creates a very interesting and difficult dichotomy for you as managers of the utility and for your communities. We have a commodity that's so utterly important, we physically cannot survive without it. We cannot grow as a community without it. Yet we undervalue it to the point where we literally pour it down the drain. And we're having to shift that as we approach this infrastructure crisis that the American Water Works Association talks about. So as part of that, I give you that background to set the stage of where we're going and what we're having to deal with your utility. I have to emphasize this is not just approaching the city of Belton. It's encountered by every utility in the nation. To perform a cost of service and rate design study, we use a 4-step process. We look at our revenue requirements, we functionalize those, we allocate them to customers, and we design rates. And we'll go through each of those in a little bit more detail, starting with creation of revenue requirements. Our revenue requirements, simply put, are the revenues your utility needs to recover each year to make ends meet. We use what's called a cash basis methodology for a city-owned utility. Cash basis methodology, we look at all of your annual operations and maintenance expenses. We look at any cash capital outlay, and we look at annual debt service. We do not look at depreciation expense, and we do not look at any sort of return on investment or profit. At the end of the day, it is a cash in, cash out equal zero-sum game that we're looking for. Within that, you can see here, we've made some projections for a 5-year study period. We worked with your staff to start with their preliminary FY 2023 budget. We compared that to historical data and then used that to make projections going forward. Those projections do include some assumptions for inflation. There's also some assumptions for staff, adding additional staffing. If we get all those great developments in, we're going to have to be able to have the staffing necessary to serve those developments. We also had to look at debt service. There's a couple components of that debt service. We'll go over in a moment some capital improvements that the city is looking to build. In addition to those capital improvements, you also have from your water supplier, they're taking on new debt that they pass over just lovely straight to you. And so that is another component that's hitting you. Once we add all of those cash expenditures up, we then subtract out what we call revenue offsets. These are things like tap fee income, if we can get it, miscellaneous type fees that we can use to offset our expenditures. And we take that balance to design our rates from. When we look at our capital improvement plan, first we start with the water, and you see lots of projects here. This is a planning document that your staff puts together each year, and each thing, please be aware that they're not saying, oh gosh, you have to approve all of these projects today. They will bring to you and you'll talk through them as your course as things transpire over the next 5 years. But we do want to look at and understand what's coming up. What kinds of projects do we have to plan for, and do we need to fund? For the water utility, we've got about $7 million in projects that have been identified as necessary between now and 2026. 2027, we don't really have anything clear enough now. That crystal ball is sometimes hard to shake. But we do look at a funding plan for those. We're anticipating approximately 4 million of those projects having to be debt funded with a future debt issuance, something that's not today, but coming in the future. The balance, that $3 million in projects, we anticipate to be able to fund through other funding sources like fund balance, your reserve funds that you have on hand, other funding sources that staff has identified available. And 2, through what we call cash capital outlay. Some of these projects will put into your revenue requirements and just plan to recover just a little extra revenue each year to pay cash for some of these projects as you move forward. On the wastewater side, we have a much.
Can we go back
Sure.
a couple? I just, under the revenue requirements, I was just amazed that the water utility over that time period is up almost 50%. Like 17, 18, 9, 15, 6. But we have nowhere near that in the wastewater utility. It's like 17% increase across the board.
Yes.
With some negative years.
Yes, exactly. So part of those increases, you're absolutely right. Part of those increases are about the cash capital outlay. We've got the portion of projects we're looking to pay with cash from your utility rates. The other issue, especially in between 2023 and 2024, is we have a huge increase. It's about $350,000 related to your water service provider taking on new debt. And then your water purchase costs, which is also a very large portion, it's about 20% of your revenue requirements. Not only on purchasing that water, we've got 2 factors that hit us. And this happens actually not only with the water purchase, which is one of your biggest line items in your budget, but it also happens with your electricity costs. We have the factors of inflation plus growth. So we're buying more and more water and more services.
What rate of inflation did you use?
We use 6%.
And it's historically been?
About that, depending on the line item. This last year, it's been higher, and about 2 years before that, it was lower. One of the things, sure, go ahead.
I guess the thing that caught me off guard is, we're going to issue some debt and really have about 3 million in expenditures. And from 2023, we go from 5.3 million to 8.5 million, which is 3 million. I'm just surprised that the revenue requirements equal our spending.
Your capital spending, yes, sir.
That's a little unusual to me.
Yes, it's the biggest chunk of that is your water purchases. They're taking on new debt on your behalf. And they're also just the cost of that, their cost of operations that they charge you. And then that's compounded with your growth
But
and
that-
therefore buying more water.
That inflation and expense doesn't hit our wastewater utilities? nearly
Not
hard?
as much. You would see that if I had a 2022 column there, you would see a huge increase from where we were in 2022 to 2027, because that debt is all hitting in 2023 for the wastewater. And so it's just hitting earlier. So it's, if we were to put the 2022 number on there, it would be a lower number.
Excuse me. You're correct on the to give you some idea on the large increase in costs. From 23 to 24, that $1 million increase you see there.
Yeah.
I believe that almost that entire $1 million is due to BCWCID issuing $21 million of debt for Belton projects. And that's just straight out debt service. In 20, for the jump from 25 to 26 is kind of the time frame when we're adding some staff. And then when you get out to 26 and 27, that's also debt service on future debt issuances that we have for some of these out year projects that we have. So it is a combination, exactly as Lisa said. It's kind of cash flow needs from capital projects. Cash funding capital projects is a big driver of some of this. And then obviously the inflation growth and everything else that kind of goes along with that. But that's all kind of, I mean, if you will, that's all scheduled increases for the most part due to the staffing and 6% in growth and CIP mainly.
But a lot more debt than cash.
Correct. Well, yes, some of these projects we just can't do with cash funding. We're going to try to reduce it as much as we can, but I can tell you, we just don't have the cash to cash fund some of these bigger projects.
And remind me, Mike, when is our biggie hit on the TCVRQST waste?
The wastewater treatment plant.
Yes.
See, I knew how we were going on that.
We speak the same language, so, yeah.
That's in the wastewater utility. We probably will be issuing debt in fiscal 23, the latter part of fiscal 23. And then Lisa has it as part of that increase in 25 that you see from 5.5 million to 6.2 million is some of that debt service for that.
Because aren't we in the 13 million range?
I think it's like eight and a half for our costs. And again, that's the one that I'm going to throw as much fund balance as I can at that to lower that debt issuance probably down to some $4 million number that'll save us some interest.
Good. One last question and we can move on. I'm sorry, but
don't be sorry.
the items like Loop 121 utility relocation phase 2, that's happening. We're scheduled to spend $2 million to do that in 2026, or are we just putting that out there?
TxDOT has told us to be ready for that, basically. So that's coming, exactly when, we can't tell you, but it's scheduled, just best guess. I mean, a lot of this is trying to anticipate things. The BCW CID number one items, the sewer plant expansion, those are pretty clear. The loop, we have a pretty good idea that's coming. They bought all the right of way already, but the utility relocation, is likely to come soon. So a lot of these major capital expenses are occurring simultaneously. And so that's a big part of the need to reflect them in the study and anticipate them.
Thanks.
Mike, can you remind me what the number was for the new debt taken on by the BC? Blah, 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 blah.
The BCWCID debt, if I'm not mistaken, it's $21 million issuance,
For
and I
Belton
believe that
projects.
comes out to
For Belton projects alone.
990 something thousand per year in additional debt service for us.
Yeah, water treatment, additional water treatment, $22 million. And then there was also the, additional generation that we've been talking about with them as well. So again, number of projects to maintain and enhance water and be able to deliver that to the citizens.
Thanks.
I want to quickly touch on a couple things. One of the things that's very difficult in a study like this, we do a 5-year planning process. What we find is beyond 5 years, the value in that is just lost. And if we go shorter than 5 years, we're not giving you enough lead time to plan and prepare for what's coming. So we typically go with 5 years. But when we go with 5 years, we have to work to make reasonable assumptions and prudent assumptions. It becomes really hard when we look at the last 2 years that all of us remember vividly of a global pandemic followed by unprecedented housing boom with now crazy inflation rates, and we don't know what's going to happen next. That being said, when we do something like this, we try to be as realistic as possible, but err on the side of being conservative. From that, I mean, we try to, if when in doubt, we overestimate expenditures and underestimate growth in revenue and water sales, because I would much rather have a circumstance where in 2 years from now, you all go, we don't have to raise rates this year. Yay, yes. Or you say, we're going to take this excess cash and use it to, instead of issuing $4 million in debt, we're going to issue $3 million in debt. I'd much rather you be in that situation than call me and say, guess what? We're upside down. That being said, we have given your staff a very thick stack. Fortunately, these days it's all electronic, so we don't have to kill trees as much as we used to, but they have all of the work papers. And one of our recommendations in moving forward with this is that every year they follow you. They're following what you've done and what your actual performance is compared to where we thought you'd be. So before you move forward with the following year's budget, you have a sniff test. If you start veering far away from where we're at, then as a council, you make some policy decisions. Do we go back to the drawing board? Do we just say, oh, we don't need that rate increase for this year? What do we need to do? That being said, we do try to look at it and shake it as much as we can. But that crystal ball, if I could get a really clear crystal ball, well, I'd be in Hawaii right now. So that being said, the next step in the process is what we call cost functionalization. Now, I will tell you that Webster's dictionary will say that that's not a word, and spell check always says it's not a word, but the American Water Works Association just decides it really is a word. To understand cost functionalization, first we have to understand how a water utility is built. So a water utility is built with extra capacity to handle times of peak demand. When I say that, any engineers in the room get real excited, and the normal people go, what does that mean? So I'm going to use an example that I personally relate to very well, which I hope most people can relate to, which is a restaurant. If you go to a restaurant at 7 o'clock on a Friday night, every table in the house is full, at least if it's a good restaurant. You may even have to wait to get in. If you go to that same restaurant at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, probably a ghost town. If we were to measure how many average tables this restaurant serves per hour over a 24-hour period, we may find that they serve 10 tables per hour. When we look at the restaurant, we go, why do you have 100 tables if you're serving 10 per hour? The answer is the restaurant's built with extra capacity to handle times of peak demand. It's built for Friday night dinner, not for 2 o'clock on Tuesdays. Just like our restaurant or water utility is built the same way. It's built with a large amount of extra capacity to handle times of peak demand. It's built for July in Central Texas, where we all want to have our big, beautiful green lawns. It's built for 7 a.m. in the morning or 6 a.m. in the morning when everybody in the neighborhood gets in the shower and runs their dishwasher and their washing machine and everything all at the same time. And in fact, by law, we have to build these systems to handle that. Well, there's a cost impact to doing that. In our restaurant, we had to build everything bigger, so it's more square footage to build, a bigger building. It's more heating and cooling and more to operate. Same thing with the utility. It costs us more to build it because we have to build everything bigger. We have to have bigger pipes, bigger pump stations, bigger storage tanks, and bigger treatment plants. We also have to, our investments there, not only are they bigger, but then it takes more to operate all of this bigger equipment. To understand cost functionalization, then, the American Water Works Association says, well, you know what? There's a cost impact to doing that. If we never had to peak, it would cost us a lot less to provide service. So we go through and we look at every line item in your budget on an individual line item by line item basis. And we functionalize the functional nature of the cost into 3 categories. The first are base cost of service. This is fundamentally the theoretical cost of what it would cost us to meet average daily demands if we never had this peaking we talked about. The second category are extra capacity costs of service, which is that incremental increase in our operating costs associated with this peaking on the system. And the third category are customer cost of service. This is the cost of reading meters, sending bills to customers, having customer service representatives available to answer customer questions, et cetera. Once we've done that, we then allocate costs to customers. The reason why this is important and this cost functionalization is important is because when we look at our customers, we realize that customers use water very differently. Some customers, and we typically look at classes of customers, because for most systems, it's not practical to look at every single customer on the system. But some customers, if we were to map their usage from one month to the next, have very little deviation or change in their demands. The one in the kind of green color there, customer X, very little deviations in their demands from one month to the next. But customer Y, we see this nice bell chart of when their capacity or their usage ramps up. So what does this mean? Let me give you an example.
Who is Y?
They're theoretical customers or classes of customers for illustration purposes. In the city of Belton, fundamentally, customer X is going to be a domestic meter. And yes, customer Y is going to be an irrigation meter more often than not. Let me give you my personal example. We used to live in the city of Austin, and we had this great, beautiful lot with green grass and landscaping, and it was gorgeous. I loved it until we got the water bill. In the winter months, my family used about 4,000 to 5,000 gallons of water every month. In the summer, we used 15,000 gallons of water. That meant the city of Austin Water Utility had to build infrastructure to provide me service and maintain that infrastructure and that capacity to provide me service with 15,000 gallons of water a month every month, even though I only used it for 3 or 4 months out of the year. So what the AWWA does is they define a methodology. We break the cost into those 3 categories. The base cost of service are allocated to classifications of customers based off of their average daily demands. Extra capacity costs of service are allocated to classes of customers based off of their peaking or the comparison of their peak month to their average month, their peaking demands on the system, i.e. the extra capacity they're requiring the system to take or keep for providing them service to peak. And the customer costs of service are the cost of reading meters and billing customers. Once we've done this, we then start to establish and develop rates. Ideally, we work to develop rates so each class of a customer recovers its fair cost or its share of allocated costs. Again, this is a zero-sum game. When we get into rate design, there are policy considerations, which is obviously what you all are here to look at and deal with, and we need to look at and talk about those. However, keep in mind, at the end of the day, we still have the same revenue to recover. So what we don't get out of the base charge, we have to get out of the volumetric charge. What we don't get out of customer X, we have to get out of customer Y. And so, oops.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes, ma'am.
On the customer X and Y, are those kind of fictitious numbers we're
Yes,
looking
ma'am.
at? And so,
Yes.
and what we're looking at right now as well?
What we're looking at
fictitious?
now are going to be designed rates that are for your customers. Customer X and customer Y are really just a sample. If you had a 2-customer system of why we look at it, and why one customer might be very different than another. Real world examples of that would be a customer who isn't irrigating, because most of the peaking in most systems are going to be about irrigation. It's going to be about your sprinklers outside.
Yeah, no, I understand the explanation of what that is. I was curious if the numbers were fictitious or if they were tying into something actual.
No, they're fictitious. In terms of rate design, we're making a couple recommendations, starting with your water rates. Your current water rates, regardless of your customer and the size of the meter that customer has, you bill everybody the same. Now let's talk a little bit about meters, because this is an important detail in the recommendation. So when a customer connects to your water system, your water department works with that customer to identify what size of meter that customer needs. The bigger the meter, the greater the instantaneous demand that meter can take for water. When we do that, your system has to be sized and able to provide that bigger meter water, regardless of whether or not they even turn on the faucet. So if somebody comes in and says, hey, I've got a house and I want to put in a 2-inch meter, that automatically increased your costs because you had to put in that meter. Not only do your cost of putting in the meter is greater, the bigger the meter, the more it costs to buy. We also have to maintain those meters. The bigger the meter, the more often you have to replace them. In addition to that, the bigger the meter, the greater the instantaneous ability of that meter to take more water. That meant you had to install larger pipes and larger storage and larger pump stations, et cetera, et cetera. So the American Water Works Association has adopted a best management practice throughout the industry to charge larger meters a larger rate to reflect this. They created a meter size equivalency ratio that basically ties, compared to a standard 5/8 inch meter, what is the equivalent of a larger meter? How many times greater can that larger meter, how much more water can it take? In looking at the typical residential customer is going to have in the city of Belton, your typical residential customer has a 5/8 inch meter. Most of your residents do that. Some may have larger lots. They may want to be irrigating. They may have pools. They may have water features or something, a very large house or a house with a sprinkler system, i.e. inside sprinkler system, something like that, that would require them to have a larger meter. But most of your households, the lion's share, are going to be in that 5/8 inch range. Because of your system is growing and you're no longer a small little utility in a small teeny tiny town, we're recommending going to billing base charges based off of meter size, based on the chart that's presented on this slide. Your standard meter, instead of $17 for a 5/8 inch meter, your residential customers would see a $2.64 increase in the first year, with small stepped increases each year thereafter. Bigger meters are going to see a larger increase. Keep in mind though, a 12-inch meter, when we get into percentages, they'll be looking at their whole bill. If they have a 12-inch meter, for example, remember that they're using copious amounts of water. So their total bill, that percentage will be in the wash there based off of when you look at the whole bill for the customer, including their volumetric rate.
Do these increases year over year, or are they equal percentages for all meter sizes?
Excellent question. The percentages are pretty close to equal. Yes, they are the same because the ratio is the same, the equivalency factor. Yes, sir.
Do you know the percentage increase we're jumping each year?
I don't, but we can get that for you.
I just didn't want to crunch it.
I think it was a 4%-ish for everything every year increase.
So in 2027, we're looking at a 20% increase theoretically?
Probably theoretically, yes, something like that.
From current.
And to give you an idea, just counts. So as you're staring at that, you're going, holy mackerel, I'm going from on a 12-inch meter, $17 to $3,275. We have one 12-inch meter in the city. We have about, I believe the number was close to 6,000 or so, 6,500 5/8 inch meters. So, that's the vast majority of our residential customers are in the 5/8 number. So just to give you.
I'm a believer in that. And I think we've really lagged behind in our business billing for water. I just don't think we've had a very good system. And if this corrects some of that, I think it sure makes sense. I think businesses have gotten off kind of light in terms
Yes.
of,
And just keep in mind too, as we go through the discussion, that rate that you're seeing, what we're calling current, this young lady developed that structure that we have today in 2014. That study ended 4 fiscal years ago, and we have not raised rates in 4 fiscal years.
was that
So-
the plan back then?
No, it was just, we got to that, and then I think what happens is, it's like, well, we just weren't, we needed to do another study, and we just
Or-
didn't do that.
Revenue also.
Yeah, or it
exceeded-
could have been that too. And so, yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah, which is the case this year.
Yeah, this year, I have that number. I think we're going to, we'll have revenues over expenditures this year. Actually, I may have that backwards. 1 second.
No, it's fine. We're just ahead.
I think actually this year, we're gonna be in the hole. Expenses will exceed revenues slightly. In the end is what I'm estimating. I think $100,000 difference there. In previous years, yes, we've been building that fund balance up. But remember, as I said before, I plan on using a large amount of that fund balance that we built up for capital projects in 23. So just as we go forward.
Would you say that, well, what percentage of our meters, residential meters are 5/8?
Most of them, probably 95% or more.
Almost all.
Almost all of them.
I would
Very
say,
few.
I mean, I've been around a while, city stuff, and I had no idea that there were, that I could say, oh, please, I need a 4-inch meter at my house.
You would have to typically justify it. Yeah, but again, the biggest issue is it's the commercials. You've got a lot of commercial businesses and you're getting more and more commercial businesses that drive the need to do this.
Yeah.
The other thing I will say is back in 2014, we talked about doing this, but at that time there wasn't the data to allow us to analyze it. And your staff today was able to pull everything together so we could figure out what's even out there.
So is that $17 the bill, or is that per 10,000 or per something?
That $17 and recommended these rates are your base charge. An excellent question. That is the minimum. And that includes 2,000 gallons of water usage. It would be, is being proposed to be charged to every domestic meter. Sprinkler meters, which we'll talk about in a moment, we're not proposing a base charge for. Now, what's in that number that's recommended, or remember those customer costs we talked about, which is the cost of meter reading and billing? Well, it doesn't matter if you use water, you've got the cost. It also includes a proportionate share of your debt. I believe it's around 60% of your annual debt service is in that base charge.
We're electronic meter readers now, right?
For the most part, yes. That data comes to our tower, comes into our system for the majority of our stuff. But that doesn't necessarily, we still have meter tech people that have to, manually read and install meters and that sort of stuff. But yes, a lot of that readings now is all electronic.
Now let's talk about volumetric charges.
Yeah, let's buckle up.
That's great. We can talk about it and we'll talk about it. So I love it. I love you sit up. That's good. That's better than rolling your eyes back and being bored. So the proposal before you is to go to 2 classes of customers. Historically, you've charged everybody, regardless of what they're doing, the same. The proposal today would be to require to charge domestic, 1 customer class, and a sprinkler meter or irrigation meter a second. There are a couple reasons for this. Remember, we talked about customer X and customer Y. While the numbers aren't exactly what X and Y were, they're pretty close. And that's really what you're seeing. Your domestic meter, if you think about it, in your own home, what you use inside your house on a regular basis is about the same every day. But in the summer, or when you turn on that sprinkler, here we go. And so that is the proposal and why the costs are different. These costs come from a couple reasons, this cost difference. First, you're going to notice the percentage increase from where we are today till the endpoint. The percentage difference is lighter or lower for a domestic versus a sprinkler. That is for two reasons. The first reason is that sprinklers, quite frankly, haven't been paying their full cost of provided service. So we have to catch them up with a full almost dollar increase in the first year.
I've got a little debate with that because sprinklers have been charged a minimum usage fee for 12 months and they maybe only use 5. And so to be able to get a fee for no water, I think maybe they have been paying.
Well,
a fair share.
and keep in mind, and that gets to the second reason there, is because the base charge, we're proposing these fees that we're presenting, that base charge, we're not charging to a sprinkler meter. A sprinkler meter isn't paying that base fee. And so we're not getting the revenue from the base charge. So all of their cost has to go into the volumetric charge, whereas your domestic meter, we're getting a very large percentage from all those big meters that, and all of that 6,500 5/8 inch meters, we're getting a huge amount of revenue from the base fee. And so what we have, the balance, what we have to get out of the volumetric fee is lower. With the sprinkler meters, we're getting 0 out of the base fee. So the volumetric fee, we're having to get everything from the volumetric fee.
And the percentage increases though are just nuts. I mean, the first year it's up 25, almost 26% for the sprinkler people, nothing for domestic. And at the end of 2027, the sprinkler fee is up 81.62%, while the domestic is up 29.
So we also have to look at the base charge and the total bill of a customer. If we were to look at the total bill of a customer, remember in the residential or for the base charge, a domestic meter would have to pay that base charge. So we have to put into the total bill, and that total bill you'll see increase because we're going from $17 to $24.38, and then we put in the volumetric. And so we have to look at the total bill. And it does cost more to provide service to a sprinkler meter. If we get out of rate design and we just look at the total cost per 1,000 gallons for a sprinkler meter versus a domestic meter, it just plain costs more to provide them service.
So if I
How is that?
understand you correctly, what you're saying is that there's a base charge for domestic, but no base charge for sprinkler. Therefore, if you don't use the water for sprinkler in the winter, you're not billed.
That's correct. That is correct. Now, in terms of choices, this is a policy decision. Should the city of Belton not want to do this and keep with charging everybody the same, the volumetric rate for all meters, then we would take that domestic number and it would add about 25 to 30 cents per 1,000 gallons to that domestic number. And so choice A, and we can certainly give you that number for your staff, but choice A would be to go with this proposal, which has 2 different volumetric rates. And the concept there, and the other thing to keep in mind is out of over 8,000 meters, there are about 800 meters in this category. So the percentage, about 10% of your customers are in this category.
And how many of those are residential? I mean, I'm thinking, does BISD have a sprinkler meter? Does Mary Hardin Baylor, does every commercial entity in the city have a sprinkler meter and using a ton more water than a residential person who put in a meter, maybe for a pool or like the guy in Three Creeks? I was going to try to save some money and not pay sewer, and so I paid $500 for a meter, and now I'm paying, $17 every month in the winter. I'm all for paying for the water that I'm using, but I'm not for paying for nothing.
Right, and that's exactly why we're trying to get away from that part, the base fee. Under the scenarios that are recommended, they're in the winter, somebody who has a sprinkler meter will pay 0 if they don't use it. That's what we're trying to get to with this structure. The choice is, and it is simply your choice. You've got 6,000 customers, 6,500 customers in that domestic category. Actually more than that. Residential customers, actually 8,000 customers in domestic. and you have a smaller number, that 700 that have a separate sprinkler meter. Many of those are commercial. I mean, most businesses will have.
I think the
you know, will
5/8
have that.
sprinkler would be pretty limited.
5/8
3/4
or 3/4,
or
yeah.
less.
Yeah, there are now, you know, it's purely, I don't think we have any homeowners here that are requiring homes to have sprinkler meters, separate sprinkler meters. I don't think we're that advanced yet. But there are probably a few. It's most of them, the folks with sprinkler meters would be purchasing it on their own to save that wastewater charge. Even at that, even at the different rate structure you see there, you know, there would still be savings, because as we go forward and we start talking about wastewater rates would be going up as well. And at least that's the recommendation. And so you're still going to save having that separate meter, because you're not paying that wastewater charge. You're only paying for the volume of water that you use from that sprinkler meter, if that makes sense.
And the homeowner, is that on the homeowner to install? That's probably-
Currently,
Yes, stupid
yes.
question.
The city does not require that. So it would be the homeowner or the developer would have that in their guidelines that you have to have that, but we don't have any of that here. Three
It's
Creeks
not a
probably has
practice,
some
I
of
don't
that.
think that's happening currently. Majority of them would have been older where, hey, I don't want to pay sewer. I got a pool and a big sprinkler system.
Sure.
And I just want to be as efficient as I can. And
Right.
years ago, you paid for what you used, and then we went to the minimum fee.
Yeah. Again, the option to this would be, instead of having two tiers like this, if you would prefer, and it is absolutely a policy decision, because we're trying to collect the same amount of revenue either way. We could go in and calculate what if you wanted to have one category, which is what we currently have. If you wanted to have one category of volumetric rate, what would that rate look like? And as Nalisa said, the rates that you see there would be comparable to that domestic. So take that and then add a quarter to each of those domestic rates. So now everyone will have in 2023 a 25-cent volumetric rate increase, everyone. Or the other option to choose from would be, like in this example, would be having a higher sprinkler rate, but it just affects those with sprinkler meters. Completely a policy decision. And if you don't want to make that choice tonight, you don't have to. We can come back. But that's the choice that we're looking at here. This new category that we're looking at adding is a sprinkler for sprinkler meters only for those 800 customers, and then capturing the cost of providing service to just that category of customer. Again, also taking into account that we would no longer be billing a base rate each and every month for a sprinkler. So, you know, that savings alone is the 17 times 12,
Well, I do
which
think
they
there's
would
a-
have been doing.
There's an underlying flaw that goes way, way back, and that's like, we're trying to collect the same amount of revenue with a different structure.
Mhm.
Well, 671 people who are paying a fee 5 or 6 months out of the year and getting no water. So I don't know how we can say we need to collect the same amount of revenue. We need to recognize that that was flawed and figure out how to charge somebody for a sprinkler only.
Correct. I mean, I can't go backwards. I'm only looking
No, I
forward
know,
to the
but
next
to
5
be-
years.
To say that we need to collect the same revenue.
That's why we're making this change. I mean, I would recognize the fact that, you know, that we need to probably make that change. No base rates for sprinklers.
I'm good. Yeah.
But, you know, this is how you wanted to address that with separate customers.
What older homes that have sprinkler systems, but they're not, they don't have a separate meter.
Correct.
How much do we charge for someone who wants to go back and put in a separate meter to take
Um,
advantage of that?
They would pay for a meter, a new meter. You know, that $500 number comes to mind, but it might be less or more than that.
Given the rise in sewer rates.
Correct. But then you recover that.
Would be recoverable within a few years, I would think, because the sewer rates have got to go up when we have very little control over what sewer rates do with the VRA.
Correct. That's just the analysis that we'd have to sit down with each individual customer wanting to make that decision and see if it would be worthwhile for them.
to quickly just sum up on the water rates, again, we're recommending a base charge based off of meter size that would apply to all customers, regardless of whether you're commercial, residential, et cetera. However, a sprinkler meter would not pay that base charge. The base charge would include 2,000 gallons of water a month. The volumetric rates, you have two choices. The first is to charge a domestic meter and a sprinkler meter separate volumetric rates. So the sprinkler meter would just be paying for the months they're using. The second option, which by the way, this is part of the reason why this recommendation is made, is it is one of the best management practices. While we always have this very difficult, we talked about this great dichotomy we have here, really in the industry today is we get into the irrigation thing. A lot of utilities actually have an inclining block rate structure. So by the time you're putting water on your lawn after your household has used the interior part, you're paying $10 per 1,000 gallons or more for that use. And so again, that's partially recommended because of it's the best management practice. It's recommended because it is the cost of providing service to these customers. And number three, it's recommended because it provides rate relief to the other 7,200 customers on the system. That being said, your second option available to you is we can go and recommend to do just like you've always done and bring you back a rate, which is a blended rate where everybody pays the same. Back of the envelope number we ran this afternoon came in about 25 to 30 cents different. If you take that domestic rate, add 25 to 30 cents each year, and that would give you your recommended rate for each year. And so again, it's an entirely policy-driven decision for you and in your community. To go and look at the wastewater side of things, fortunately, it's a lot simpler in wastewater because we don't have to deal with all this peaking stuff. So we have a base charge and a volumetric charge. We're recommending increases each year. With your base charge, or your base charge is really just one increase this year or for 2023 and one in 2024. And then your volumetric rates go up a little bit each year. The driving forces behind that, as we said, the immediate driving force is this debt we got to take on right now. And because of that, that's really what's hitting you the most on the wastewater front. In terms of recommendations, excuse me.
So just to clarify,
yes,
so that would be 2023, 1625 for the first 2,000 gallons and then 750 for every
Yes, sir.
1,000 over that.
Yes, sir.
And by 2027, we're charging $885 per 1,000 and $1859 for the first 2,000.
Yes, sir.
And that doesn't matter what size tap you got or meter
No.
or doodly dip. We're just charging that rate.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
In terms of benchmarking, one of the things, the first thing I always say when we do a benchmarking analysis looking at other communities is we have to be very careful to this. This is not a measurement of the efficiency of your utility. The reason being is because we have no idea what's in their water rates. Some of these utilities may actually make money off their water utility and send it over to the general fund. Other utilities may be using general fund taxes to supplement their water utility. Other utilities may have impact fees. Some may be on surface water, some are on groundwater. So never, ever, ever, when you're doing benchmarking to another utility, think this is a measure of the efficiency and effectiveness of the utility, because it is not. This is just showing you what a customer in these other communities' water bills may look like. To be very thorough, you would have to look at their total cost of living in that community, looking at tax rates and other fees to buy the house and impact fee, all of those things. So what you're seeing here is that really the recommended rates would give you be kind of in the middle of where everybody else is. In terms of, go ahead.
And I do apologize to you. So I did the crazy thing and actually before this meeting verified these numbers with today's numbers. This is off of the TML study, but it's actually in 21. So just to give you an idea, Colleen is today charging $1.47 more. So they're at $50.54. Temple is at $55.10 and Harker Heights is at $55.77. So each of those is about $1.50 more than what I'm reflecting on that schedule there. So we're even closer than that I'm showing you right here. And the rates that you're seeing for Belton are the new rates that would be proposed under the new schedule. And the intention is not necessarily to be the cheapest. It's just we would still want to remain comparable. And I think we can show you that there.
You know, one thing we did request in our last similar comparison was let's pick cities that are similar in size and population and growth and use those same. And Pflugerville, Leander, it's just pretty far out there, I think.
Yeah, and there, again, there was kind of really, this is me just picking cities going down the TML list at people that were generally down into our Central Texas area. When I got down, it was population driven. So once I got down to Buda, there were 9,000 or something. So I said, stop there. That's the magic to that. But you're certainly correct. We could pick just 25,000 cities across the state, but I was kind of trying to stay.
Neighbors are similar, 25,000, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
To use, so we have pretty standard comparisons.
My question about the gap between Belton and Killeen, just for example, since we're both getting our water from WCID #1, is there an easy answer to why we're $20 higher than they are?
Well, a couple things. These are their 2022 rates, not their 2023 rates. So as we talked about that new debt that Bell County is going in, I'm going to bet money that if they're getting water from Bell County, those rates are going to go up because they're going to face the exact same issue you are. I can't tell you that, and their council has to consider that. But remember, you're comparing them 2022 right now here today compared to conditions that you're planning for next year. And so that number may be slightly different. And then as I pointed out earlier, we don't know what their debt looks like. Are they funding it out of the general fund? Are they funding it 100% out of the utility fund? We don't know if they've got a general fund transfer from utilities to the debt to general, or and so again, it's really hard to derive a comparison other than of efficiencies, but instead it's a comparison of, okay, I'm a resident, I'm looking at, am I buying my house in Belton? Or am I buying my house in Temple or Killeen? And that's the big comparison there, not a comparison of efficiencies.
And revenue sources.
Yes.
for all sources.
Exactly.
Based on population.
And impact fees, tap fees, developer agreements, all of those things.
Well, has their own water plant, so they're producing their own water as opposed to us buying it from a third party.
Temple, Killeen also start off at 3/4 tap size rate. They do not have 5/8.
Yes.
The only one I could find was Georgetown that had 5/8.
Yes. And that's the reason why we have 5/8 meters, recommendations for rates for 5/8 meters is because that's what most of your meters are. They just, sometimes when communities go in, some communities say, you know what, the only option is 3/4 inch and up. Belton has a 5/8 option, and that's what most of your residential meters are. And so we develop rates for 5/8 meter because that's what's in the ground.
It wouldn't be to make that first step cover 3/4 and 5/8 at a flatter rate.
We can certainly look at that and we can bring that back to you. Sure. In terms of recommendations and moving forward, we would recommend the rates that we've outlined here. That being said, however, to the extent council would like us to come back to you, we can come back to you with, for example, the request just a moment ago with combining a 5/8 inch and 3/4 inch meter, things of that nature. We can certainly bring those to you for consideration. We do recommend the 5-year plan that would be put forward. In terms of moving forward, we do again recommend your staff as part of your annual budgeting process is continually look at this and measure where we're at. We tried to get as good as we could in a projection for the next 5 years, but you always need to keep monitoring to make sure we don't veer off course significantly.
And keep in mind as well that you're not adopting the rate for the next 5 years. We're just approving this recommended rate structure. And then annually, we'll come back to council with an adoption of the utility rate for that year. We like to generally follow, especially early in the study, you generally like to follow the study for the first couple of years, or why even do it? But we will look at that each year to decide if we are on the study or not.
But I did want to point out one other thing, and that's on page 15, projected customer count. I thought this was pretty important because we're trying to see what our need is going to be in 2026, what revenue will be required. And I think this really shed some light on that, because projected customer count, the only thing we increased was residential, 6% a year. We didn't increase one new sprinkler person, not one new commercial customer, no industrial, and no school. I mean, there's zero growth in there except for residential, which I just.
So when we looked at the historical growth, which is always what we benchmark across, we didn't see very much growth or significant growth in those counts. And remember, as I stated, when in doubt, we always want to be very conservative in our numbers. But as an example, let's take your largest connection, which we looked at this afternoon, which was a school that uses the most water. If we were to add 2 schools, which I think are being contemplated, part of that issue is when are they going to be built with students in it and taking water? But that being said, if we added those 2 schools on, it would have less than 1 cent change on the volumetric rate. And so it takes residential growth has a lot more impact because it's a lot more numbers, and they comprise of the bulk of your consumption. Those commercial connections, they just don't take up enough consumption to materially impact your rate. But
20% of our usage.
Sure. Well, again, historically, you haven't had a lot of growth in that consumption. And so when we don't see historical growth, it's very difficult and to be conservative to say, oh yeah, we think we're going to grow lots more here. That being said, though, sure.
Zero for every other category
Sure.
except residential.
May I say something as just a taxpaying citizen?
No, but I know what you're gonna say, just pay it.
My son's building a house in Georgetown, Berry Creek. His meter was $9,000. That's why rates aren't always a comparison. A 1-inch commercial he's doing for the company he's working with was $40,000. It's impact fees. That's what they are. That's what they're doing. That's the difference. A residential meter in Berry Creek was $9,000.
Impact fees were
What
brought
are
up very,
we
very early.
doing? So we're charging 500 for a meter?
Right.
I mean, we need to look at our overall fees, charges, expenses that we incur.
Yeah, it's
I think our meter.
500,
That seems like
450,
a-
500. right?
That seems like a missed opportunity.
And been 500 for how
raise.
long?
Quite a number of years.
So let me address impact fees, because the $9,000 is an impact fee. A tap fee is the cost of setting that tap and that meter in the ground. That's all a tap fee is. An impact fee is regulated by Chapter 395 of the local government code. And what an impact fee does is it goes in and says, what is the capital needs of this utility to provide that new connection with service? When we look at an impact fee, we look at existing improvements that are on the ground, that we have expenses for, that still have capacity to provide service, and we identify that cost. And then we look at all those capital projects that are coming forward, and we identify the cost of those capital projects that are being put in the ground to meet the needs of growth, to develop that impact fee. Then with that impact fee, there's some stipulations there on how we can spend it and how much of it we can actually charge and recover from customers. But then that impact fee can be used to either cash fund improvements or offset debt. But as was pointed out, that's part of what's happening here when we start looking at these other rates is you've got communities, and like I said, some of them are charging impact fees, some of them are getting funds from other sources. So hopefully that addresses that. Are there any other questions?
So what we would need from council tonight, what we would need from council tonight is some direction on either going forward with the recommendation as it's recommended, or coming back with an alternative, and what would that alternative, what would you want us to change in the recommendation? Not in necessarily the dollar amount or the rate, but like just going through the list is the billing by meter size as opposed to one. Are you comfortable with that change? And then would you want a sprinkler customer class or not? And then are you okay with wastewater as presented, or is there, I mean, there's not much I can do with that one. But we need to give the consultant some direction if we are coming back to what do we need to bring back if you're not satisfied here.
But then the details of it all, we still have yet to discuss and approve rates and whether or not we want to charge more for a meter. I mean, that's not something we can do right now. You're asking us about this structure that you've just presented.
Correct. Again, the official rate for 23 won't be adopted until September.
Right.
It will probably
But
look
it'll
very
be
similar to what you're seeing or whatever we recommend, whatever is recommended. when
And
we
are
come
we
back.
attempting to stay in the realm of the zero-sum game?
Yes.
That's-
Yes, that's kind of the standard practice for a city-owned utility, is a zero-sum game. And so going back to the zero-sum game, what we get out of impact fees, for example, we don't have to get out of utility rates. But it's a formula on impact fees. So you're aware, it's a process. So to adopt an impact fee, you do have to have a professional who is
We're not there yet.
Yeah.
can do it.
That's a
Then we go
multi-year-
into,
multi-year
they'll
thing.
present, you get into a whole public hearing process with like 60 days notice.
Right.
There's a
This
lot
is
of
a-
requirements.
This is a rate
Yeah.
structure for the 5-year period
Remember, he said he just.
that would ultimately be adopted as a part of the budget. In addition to that, we would come back to you at budget time for things like meters, meter
Right.
sizes, costs of those things. Those two different elements,
Right.
but this is
Okay.
certainly an important part of that.
Mike, I know you said that's the 2023 rate. What is the rate today as of May?
Oh, the
2022?
dollar rate?
The total bill.
I can't, we can calculate it very quickly.
But didn't you say those numbers were for 2020 on those comparisons?
The comparisons that you see there was, it's actually the 2021 TML study.
Yeah.
It's not what they're charging, at least the first three cities are charging more than that today. I want to say that our typical water sewer bill, I mean, for this number is 54 or some number. We could do the, I'll have the math for you shortly.
And so this is 2021, this chart is 2021 bills for the other communities compared to the proposed 2023 bill for Belton using the same quantity of water.
Right.
So it's as close to apples as we have available at this juncture. And so a couple of thoughts would be, I know I heard the comment of comfort level of moving forward. Perhaps we could talk about some specific questions for council. One would be, are you comfortable with proceeding with a meter billing, a base charge for water based off of meter size? If so, I believe there was a request for potentially looking at combining the 5/8 inch and 3/4 inch meter. Is that direction you would like to give us and on that one?
I feel comfortable with that. And the reason I mentioned it is I'd hate to catch a resident off guard who just unknowingly had a 3/4 meter and they just get blasted.
Sure.
So, and looking at other surrounding cities who say 3/4 and it's the starting point, that kind of makes sense to me.
We can do
I've
that.
got no problem with that.
The answer to your question, Mayor, 5,000 gallons now, today, is $57.10 compared to what this would be, $69.49. So a $12.39 increase.
About 24%.
That looks like-
21%.
that sounds a lot better.
10,000 gallons?
That's for 5,000.
5,000 gallons today.
57.
So a $12 increase.
For us.
That puts us a lot more competitive with some of our key neighbors
Yes.
at 57.
Right.
Thank you.
So on the base charge, is that direction you'd like us to proceed with and move forward with and bring that back to you?
I'd like to, I guess the other issue I had was, who's truly a residential sprinkler only person? I just, if they're a business or they should be paying a business rate, I mean, if they're watering acres.
Okay.
I think,
So are you wanting to see, there are two choices there is, so it would be three classes, domestic, residential sprinkler, and commercial sprinkler.
and I think that would be solved with a 3/4 and under size tap, right? That'd be a home, I would assume.
Okay.
But if
Well, I guess the-
HEB's running a sprinkler, wouldn't they be a little bit bigger than 3/4?
Yeah, generally your commercial meters are going to be closer to the 1 inch probably or so. Maybe not irrigation, but I bet some of the bigger ones might be.
Sure.
But as far as charging a different rate for a base rate at a 3/4 as opposed to a 5/8, we don't have any 5/8 inch 3/4 inch meters, or very few of them. Most of them currently is 3 or 5/8.
But
So
very few of them, you said.
yeah, probably, I'm not going to say absolute. I don't know 100% that we have none. But I will say it's probably very few because this system that we're working with, we're installing 5/8 inch meters. So that's why we're showing a charge for a 5/8 inch meter, not a 3/4 inch meter, because we really don't, as far as I know, don't have many 3/4 inch meters.
I don't think there's a residential customer who would know enough to ask for a 3/4 inch.
Yeah.
That.
Right. Usually what will happen is your standard residential customers are going to come in, most of the subdivisions we saw tonight, they're going to come in and say, I need a residential meter. The builder is going to get issued and they're off to the races and they've got a 5/8 inch meter set for them.
Don't know they have a
The only
choice.
exceptions would be is a large custom home or a home with acreage and things like that, where they've got an engineer involved who is engineering their pool or something like that. And they're saying, oh, we need more, which is extremely rare.
I would like to see a comparison of how much it costs in other communities to install a meter. I think when Matt said $500, it seems like that's been that way as long as I can recall. Right. So the tap fees for the whole, John's allusion to Georgetown Berry Creek is astronomical, but I have a feeling that we may be a little too low. I don't know that for sure, but just a gut reaction, because I don't remember us raising that in the recent past.
In one, I would say partial comparison is you take that $9,000 and we figure out what the annual mortgage payment is for that $9,000. And you tack that onto their bill, and that gives you a little closer gauge. Again, it's not 100% because we get into the whole general fund versus utility fund, but at least it gives us some cost of ownership or for a home in each community.
So why don't we do this? We'll bring back the options. We'll bring back the options of one volumetric rate class as opposed to two. 3 would be unruly. That would be difficult. But we'll bring that option back to you so you can see what it would be. And then, what are we doing on the base rates? We're going to leave that, or we're going to.
We can combine it.
We
It
can
really,
combine
it
that.
won't have
Okay.
any, what would it would do, I could tell you just off of memory, is it would just change that table. And it would say 5/8 inch or 3/4 inch, but the table would remain the same. And I don't anticipate, we'll put the numbers in, but I don't anticipate anything else changing.
So Mike, you're recommending we hold off and come back at the next meeting?
If that's what you're comfortable with.
I think what I'm hearing is that council would like to have a little time to digest and think about it and get a little bit more input on some of those issues.
So we need a motion to postpone to the next meeting. So move.
Second. All those in favor of postponing the final action on this until the next meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thanks for the
Motion
data.
passes unanimously. Thank you for your input and all the hard work, and staff as well.
My pleasure. Thank you for your time. We will bring back these other alternatives to you. If you come up with additional questions, requests, or anything in the meantime, please let your staff know. Mike definitely knows how to find me. And that way, next time we have everything you'd like to see in front of you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
I appreciate your Franklin. Yeah, I do. Your Franklin quote's great. I remember, I think it was Mark Twain that said, whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting over. And that's kind of, afraid that's kind of where we're going to get. That's it. Item 19, to consider award of a bid authorizing the city manager to execute the construction contract for the 6th Avenue water line replacement project and any change orders associated with that contract not to exceed the amount authorized under state law. Mr. Bates.
Yes, Mayor, Council, I'll be brief. I think we discussed this a little bit on our council tour yesterday. Here's the overview of the area, Old Waco Road to Comay. Background is obviously breaks a lot. You've known that 6 ball ward notices since 2018. Project details, we're abandoning the 8-inch line that's there in place. It's a cast iron. A lot of it's cast iron. We'll be going with a new 12-inch line. With that, we're taking out portions of a sidewalk and we're putting it back in. Thank goodness the speech interpreter is not here. That'd be we've been moving pretty quick here. So LNC Paving and Construction, we got 6 bids that came in. You can see the ranging there. 850 was our OPC. So LNC Paving and Construction was right there at it. We interviewed them. We have not worked with them before. We did interview them, myself and John Simsick back there with KPA. We felt like they answered our questions correctly. Big thing for us is traffic control in the area, and they seem to have a good grasp on that. So our recommendation would be that you award the bid of 851 to LNC Paving and Construction for the 6th Avenue, hoping to get it done by the fall of 2022, early winter, that kind of thing.
So moved. Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for short and succinct summation of that operation. Item number 20. Consider authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment to a professional services agreement with KPA Engineers for construction administration services for the 6th Avenue water line replacement project.
John has sat through the entire meeting. So just so move on that, but just, again, wonderful on the design. He'll be integral, having him as the lead engineer on the design, having him do the construction admin will be critical, and we appreciate your recommendation on that.
I told him before the meeting.
Thank you for being here for the evening.
Good
call.
I told him before the meeting to go to his son's Little League game. I'd call him when we got close.
He should have gone.
He turned me down. He won't turn me down next time.
I bet he won't.
So moved. Motion, Mayor, or does that?
I have a motion. Do I get a
Second.
Oh.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You better not be. Motion passes unanimously. This meeting is adjourned. Well, I got off track to begin with. Took me 30 minutes to get back on where I was supposed to be.
What are you going there?
Thank you for your math work, your financial expertise. I got totally